Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Package.
Okay, this evening we have 3 separate meetings. The first meeting will be a joint meeting between the Select Board, the County Commissioners, and the Planning Commission. And I am going to call this meeting to order on behalf of the Select Board and have Tom call the...
Call to order the County Commissioners meeting.
And Nat, if you want to just call your meeting to order.
Call the meeting to order, the MPNEDC.
Okay, that's it. Okay, so all 3 meetings are open, and I just want to confirm, obviously, County Commissioners and Select Board have a quorum, but just, I see Dave, Wendy, Joe, I see Mike. Okay, so you guys, and Christina, so we definitely have a quorum of the MPNEDC. Okay, great. So this is a one-item agenda, and it is to review the draft findings of the impacts of the NOAA vessel speed reduction regulation on Nantucket and economic analysis. And before Rod from the Donahue Institute begins his presentation, I thought I'd just give a little summary of why we engaged in this process. The federal government proposed a ferry vessel speed restrictions in the off-season that would set a mandated speed that would make the fast ferry not able to run, and it would reduce our Steamship Authority slow boat ferries from 3 round trips a day to 2. And as I understand it, the procedure by which a new regulation is authorized at the federal level varies depending on the potential economic impact of the regulation. And the federal government estimated the impact on Nantucket to be in the tens of millions of dollars, and we were quite sure that that was not the case, and there is a $100 million threshold by which the federal government is required to have a different regulatory approval and public input process. So we engaged the Donahue Institute to do an analysis of the potential impact of these proposed regulations. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rod to share the findings.
Hello, thank you, everyone. I should be able to share my screen so I can help show that for you. Give me 1 second.
I can do it too on this end if you want.
I think I'm okay. I just needed to open my presentation so you're not just looking at my desktop. Okay. All right, you should be able to see the presentation then.
We can.
Okay, great. All right, thank you for the introduction. I am Rod Motamedy. I am the Assistant Director of Economic and Public Policy Research at the UMass Donahue Institute. The introduction actually saved me a couple minutes of introduction, so I'll just skip over those parts. And I do still want to take a couple minutes just to introduce ourselves to the group, folks who might not be familiar with who the Donahue Institute is and what we do. We're on our 53rd or 54th year. The COVID years kind of mess up my count. The simplest way to put it is that we are a public service, research, and sort of think tank arm of the University of Massachusetts. We have 10 different business groups that are split between sort of public service work, such as early childhood education, workforce development, and so on, and a couple of other units that are more engaged in consulting or grants and contracts work. So my unit, Economic and Public Policy Research, is one of those consulting units. We do basically what it says on the label. In practical terms, what that means is things like industry and market analyses, workforce development, economic development, housing. We produce all of the state's population estimates and population forecasts. We do a lot of the census prep and economic impact studies, which happens to be my background. So that's a little bit about us and sort of who we are as an entity and what brought us here today. So the purpose of the study, we've touched on already. There is already a vessel speed restriction. It is being proposed to be modified, and in the modification, greatly expand the ocean area and the vessel types, especially that are going to be covered. I have a graphic here. We'll look at it in just a minute. But as the introduction mentioned, the main effect on Nantucket is that it'll eliminate the fast ferry service and reduce the slow boats from November 1st through May 30th of each year, so that's 7 months. And what's important to emphasize is that it's not that the high-speed ferry will just go slower. It's that it won't run at all. The ships can't run economically at those speeds at under 10 knots. And so the fast ferry service, all of those sailings would be eliminated. And then the Steamship Authority's mixed ferries would go from 3 to 2 daily trips. So what this means is that the total daily sailings from Hyannis to Nantucket would be 2 round trips. That's it. And the passenger journey time would go from 45 to 50 minutes to almost 3 hours, 2 hours and 50 minutes. So that is the core of what we're analyzing. We are not asked to do, and we don't have the expertise to do a cost-benefit analysis of what this means in terms of the economic impacts compared to the reduction in the probability of whale strikes or anything like that. We've just focused on what these changes in ferry service mean for the economy of Nantucket. So here's the graphic. Before I zoom in, these hashed marks, those are where there are currently seasonal, what they call seasonal management areas. So you can see this graphic. I think I can do a little laser pointer thing here. You can see this little graphic here. This is where things are. And as you can see, these new colored in areas basically extend seasonal management areas from essentially Gloucester all the way down to Florida. And what we have here in our area, you can zoom in. This green area is our 10-knot speed limit zone. And this goes from November 1st through May 30th. It essentially goes from North Carolina, the northern border of North Carolina, all the way up through our area. You can see that already, prior to this proposal, there were seasonal management areas in our vicinity. Cape Cod here in the green and blue. And then I'm sorry, I guess I can't, sorry, excuse me, I can't use my laser pointer and zoom at the same time. Over here on Cape Cod and off the coast here. But what you'll see this green area is how much it is expanded. So this, the Nantucket Sound, Vineyard Sound, and so on, previously were not part of a seasonal management area, are now very much in one, and it extends all around, far to the east, west, and south of Nantucket. But critically, the sound area is what we're concerned with today. So the methodology of our study, to simplify it greatly, was collect data as much as we could from as many people as we could. We got that both in sort of written and verbal communications, through interviews, through emails, through data packets, and so on, from folks across the island. We also were able to collect a lot of publicly available data on things like passenger volumes, commuting, visitation, the value of goods trade, and all these things. The things that we could quantify economically, we then ran through an economic impact model made by a company called Implan. They make one of the essentially 2 widely used economic models in the country. And we focused on commuting, visitation, and trade. So I have a slide on each of those. Then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about some qualitative impacts, and then we'll wrap up. Also, I can't see anybody, so if there's any verbal cues that I'm missing, please let me know. All I can see right now are my slides.
Rod, I will interrupt you if the board wants to ask a question, and then I'm going to open it if anybody in the audience wants to ask a question when you're done.
Okay, great. Thank you. I should be done in about, I don't know, 15 minutes or so from here. So let's talk about commuting. From using census data, we are able to estimate that there are about 1,255 commuters to Nantucket. That is just over a fifth of total employment. Obviously, with a vessel speed restriction, the plausibility or practicality of commuting becomes severely impeded. The round trip travel time would go from an hour and a half to 2 hours to 6 hours. And because of the reduction in trips, there's essentially only one boat selection each way, right? Because remember, there's only 2 round trips being made. You're obviously not going to go right back on the one that drops you off, which means there's only one other option. And so the paucity of ferry selections and the extended travel time to us suggests that just people wouldn't be making this trip. And then we all know what the housing market is like on Nantucket, so we also thought it to be extremely unlikely that folks would just move to Nantucket instead. So if you lose these commuters, their economic impact represents almost $200 million, so $192 million of economic activity. If you annualize that seasonal job loss to the whole year, it's the easier way of counting. That's 980 annualized jobs and 33 million of tax revenue. This is tax revenue of all three levels of government combined, local, state, and federal. And that is true for the tax numbers I'll show elsewhere in the presentation. So next is visitation. So the assumption we made here around visitation was that much like commuters, which are day trippers of a sort, you would be losing day trippers because it would just be too difficult to come and go. We also thought that you would be losing the vast majority, if not nearly all of the folks making really short stays, 1 or 2 night stays. The travel hassle would probably make it not worth it. So using data from the Steamship Authority, passenger surveys, and some visitor data that we're able to get from the town chamber, Nantucket Chamber, we were able to make some estimates on what volume of spending that happens between November and May is attributed to day trippers and short stays. So that worked out to be $55.5 million in those 7 months. That actually works out to be just over half of the seasonal total for spending and almost a fifth of the annual total spending that we see on Nantucket. So a pretty substantial share of total spending. So we already talked about that middle item there. And then if you run that $55 million of spending losses through the in-plan model, we would get $72 million of total economic activity, 465 jobs, and almost $14 million of tax revenues. Now we come to goods trade. This was the most complicated item or issue to really wrap our heads around. And I'm going to try to walk you through it as best I can. And hopefully you'll come to appreciate both the complexity at play here, but also my hope is to fully kind of wrap your heads around the economic impact stuff, which is partly measured and partly not, for reasons I'll get into in just a second. So we talked about in the very beginning, the daily round trips of the cargo ferries go from 3 to 2. So that is a 1/3 reduction in cargo capacity. As we all know, essentially all of the vehicles and cargo that comes to and from Nantucket goes on the Steamship Authority. There's a very small subsection that's not. Air is not going to be a viable alternative to the ships because all of the fuel for the Nantucket Airport also comes via the Steamship Authority. And it's always going to be more efficient to move goods on the ships than fuel for airplanes. And so that's not going to be an alternative. Obviously, if the shelves at your local brick and mortar stores are empty, online shopping is not going to be a substitute either because everything from UPS, FedEx, and the post office also comes on these same boats. So everything is going through the same narrow funnel to get to Nantucket. So the Steamship Authority ferries represent essentially the cap on the volume of goods that can come to and from Nantucket. So if you're taking that seasonal trade and you're reducing it by 1/3, That works out to be roughly 17% of the total annual goods trade to Nantucket. So almost a fifth, or that comes out to about 112 million. Of that, the vast majority is inbound, not entirely surprisingly, but there is still $18 million of outbound trade. So that's essentially exports from Nantucket to somewhere else. So if that's lost, that's about $22 million of economic activity. It's that fourth item there, 60 jobs and $2.7 million of tax revenue. The harder thing to quantify is that inbound trade. We found the more we thought about it, the more we realized that the true extent of that impact is essentially unquantifiable within the limits of the study, the time that we had, the data we had. But I want to make it clear that unquantifiable is not the same as cost-free. We are fairly certain about the directionality, which is negative. We just don't know how negative. And the reason for that is this inbound trade isn't just consumer goods. So if it was just consumer goods, then measuring it would be pretty straightforward. The issue is that a lot of that inbound trade is equipment, supplies, and things that we call intermediate inputs. So equipment and supplies are things that you use to produce other products, but that they themselves are not transformed into something else, right? A machine that you use to make something remains the same machine, but it's necessary to produce stuff. So for example, if you have a tractor that's down for 2 months or 2 weeks, say, and you finally get that, it takes you 2 weeks to get a part because it's hard to get it over here, et cetera, that revenue or that activity that you lost during those 2 weeks, that is oftentimes not recoverable. You can't just go back and spray, your fertilizer, your pesticide, or you can't wait 2 weeks and then harvest. That opportunity is lost, right? And it's not recoverable. So you're waiting on maybe a $500 part, but that could have put thousands of dollars of farm product at risk. Think about a restaurant or a hotel. If you have a freezer that goes down, the things that you needed that freezer for, that's unrecoverable by the time you get that freezer back. Imagine any other piece of equipment like that. Then you have intermediate inputs, which are things that go into production, but are they themselves transformed. So fertilizer would be a good example. We can use the farm example again. If you can't, that fertilizer transforms into the farm product, but you might need a few $100s of fertilizer to make a few $1,000s of product. And again, if that timing doesn't work out, if that product isn't there when you need it, you're not just losing the value of the fertilizer, using the value of the end product. So you could have a scenario where hundreds of dollars of production are hung up on 25-cent seals or gaskets or the lack of lubricant for a machine or this, that, and the other thing. And we all saw this during the pandemic. Those of you who might keep up with the auto market might recall there were millions and millions of dollars of automobiles sitting unfinished in lots because each one needed like $3 to $5 of computer chips that they just couldn't get. And so a scenario like that is plausible, where if you have equipment, spare parts, and intermediate goods that get hung up, everything that depends on them also gets hung up, and that value could be significantly greater than the value of the imports. So we can't quantify it because supply chain complexities and supply chain behavior are very, they're intertwined and interdependent and really hard to untangle. But again, we are sure that the impact is negative. We just don't know how negative. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about some of the qualitative side of things. We had notes. Yes.
Rob, before
Rod,
we leave that,
Hang on one sec.
yeah, but before we leave the section we were just on,
Yeah.
one thought I had is, how do you adjust kind of for the shoulders? We're just looking at one period, but I'm going to guess that the impacts are going to spill over either side, because what happens now, it's hard to get on the boat, it's hard to get a car here or get business done sort of in season. So a lot of the business that's done out of season it's all done out of season, so we aren't going to be able to do it, but we're still not going to be able to put it into the air. So I think there's a big spill on into some of the shoulders. Did you guys look at that, or?
We looked at it, but didn't measure it. So I talk about that briefly in construction. To just we'll preview that conversation now. There's no need to not. You know, the the construction high season, to your point, coincides with the tourism low season, right? That's the time when you're doing all the repair and maintenance, where you're doing all the building, and that's the time where you're going to need the most construction equipment coming over, and you're going to have the hardest time getting it over during that period. You can maybe pre-position some stuff, but that isn't the thing that you can do indefinitely. Um, and also, you double it up on the fact that just even if you could get the construction materials over here, you can't get the construction workers over here because the fast ferry isn't running. Um, and so we did think about that in terms of construction and then how, deferred maintenance and accumulated depreciation that remains unresolved just keeps accumulating and can create negative impacts. But we did not look into some of those other seasonal shifts. That goes into, again, that complexities of supply chain and supply chain behavior that we know is happening, but depends on thousands of individual people's decisions that we just, really couldn't wrap our heads around in the.
All right, thanks.
Rod,
But I agree with the point. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
would you prefer to get through your presentation? I have a couple people wanting to ask questions, and I'm wondering cadence-wise, would you prefer to just finish up and take them at the end?
I would. I don't have a preference one way or the other. I'd prefer to be able to see people when I talk to them, which I can't do right now. So if I guess in that sense, I would prefer to just get through my last few couple slides, and then we can go to questions.
Let's do that, and then you can take your share screen down and see more people. Okay, let's go that way.
Okay, public safety. Okay, so public safety. We had notes from both the chief of police and fire that talked about how the loss of fast ferries would be an impediment to recruiting, training, and retaining police officers and firefighters. It just everything would be harder. Going to visit family and friends off island, going to trainings, medical attention, medical care, all of those things that require the ability to come and go. Would require more time, overnight stays, the payment of overtime. So it creates morale and financial costs. Anybody who's seen Law and Order knows that the other side of the justice system is the courts. And Nantucket doesn't have a resident judge. It doesn't have a DA. It doesn't have a resident prosecutor. So it also relies on the ferries for these people to come and preside in the courtrooms and keep the wheels of the justice system moving. So all of that becomes more difficult without ferries, as does the ability to benefit from mutual aid with other emergency services and also emergency goods, getting rock salt in or getting a fire truck out for repairs all becomes more difficult. School kids are another subpopulation that would be impacted by the closure of the fast ferries, especially because essentially the restriction season lines up almost identically with the absence of a couple of months with the school year. So for nearly all of the school year, there would not be fast ferries, which means the high school kids' ability to come and go for athletics becomes severely impaired. Educational trips, field trips, none of that stuff can really be done in a day anymore. And so that, again, there's 2,000 school or youth groups, riders each month that would be impacted. If we're talking about timely and reliable transportation, I think a lot of people's minds would immediately go to healthcare. This is another area where the presidents of the Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard hospitals submitted letters about the difficulties that they expect to face for both the operations of the hospital, but also the patients. Patients not only rely on specialists coming to Nantucket, either daily, weekly, or otherwise periodically to receive care here, but also rely on the ferries to go off islands to receive medical care on the mainland. And again, if that becomes hard to do in a day, then you're talking about special accommodations or overnight accommodations or whatever. It becomes significantly more expensive, significantly more difficult to do those things. It's not just people that need to come and go. It's also medical products, whether that's pharmaceuticals or other things. So a broken MRI has to compete for space on the limited ferries in exactly the same way as anything else, but also coming in pharmaceuticals and other medical products. You would have to compete with food, fuel, and the other needs and wants of the year-round population and the visitors to get to get these things on the island. So that brings us to the other economic effects that I was alluding to, these things that we thought about and we know have economic ramifications, but we just couldn't measure in the time available to us, or would just be hard to measure generally. The first is the cost of goods. So we can anticipate that there would be a reduction in the supply of goods, but that would also then translate into an increase in the cost. How much the cost of consumer goods, food, fuel, medicine, construction materials, all of those things would go up. We don't know, but economic theory tells us that if you're limiting supply and you're increasing the cost of transportation, then the cost of goods would have to go up as well. We already talked about the construction issue, so we can just skip right over that. And then the other knock-on effect that we thought about but really couldn't quite answer is if visitation in that November through May period tails off enough, whether that's day trippers and overnighters, whether that's short stay folks, whether that's other overnighters, if people decide, you know what, we're not going to come for the holiday. We're not even going to come for longer stays because it's a hassle, or people don't come for conferences or whatever that might be. That change on the margin might be just enough to make some hotels and restaurants decide that they no longer want to stay open year round. And that would have, again, some knock-on economic effects. And here's the last slide. So this slide is just adding up the economic changes from commuters, visitors, and outbound trade. We talked about those things. If you add up just those things that we felt pretty confident measuring, that works out to $286 million of economic activity and about 1,500 jobs. That's annual, so every year that would be the difference from what would have been into the future. And that's before you account for any of these supply chain constraints and disruptions we talked about, right? That's before you talk about shortages and increased costs. That's before you talk about the import constraints and what that means to ongoing production of other goods and services and so on. So that's just those few things that we felt really confident measuring. And that works out to be about 11% of the current Nantucket economy. So that's 1 out of every $10 of economic output. That's 1 out of every 10 jobs becomes tied up to this change in ferry service. So that is all of my slides. I can stop there and I can take questions.
Okay, Erica?
Thank you, Erica Mooney. When you were looking at ferry service, did you take into account private barges and the freight boats? Will those be impacted?
My understanding, not so much. My understanding is they go slow enough where they probably wouldn't be impacted. From the folks, the information that I got was that the barges are mainly moving construction aggregate, and they're not really, there isn't a lot of other stuff coming by barge. Presumably, some things could be shifted onto barge. So again, that's that supply chain behavior that it's hard to know. Could someone put a bunch of cars on a barge and bring them over that way? Perhaps, but we didn't delve into that.
Well, here's one thing that does come over on a barge, and those are modular houses.
Mm-hmm.
And they come over almost every week, and this would limit a delivery window to 3 months max. 3 months of the year, we would have modular houses coming over 7 days a week.
Because of the sea conditions and that kind of stuff? Is that the issue?
Well, they come over on the barge,
Okay, yep.
but maybe they're not impacted because they go slow enough.
My understanding is they go slow enough. But again, I think you have that my kingdom for this widget that I'm missing, right? If the modular home comes over, but all the other construction materials are hung up, if you can't get the bags of concrete, if the pavers aren't here, or if the appliances aren't coming, or the siding, or the this or the that, even if the modular bit comes, if all the other stuff is delayed, then the whole thing is still delayed.
Yeah. And you mentioned courts will be impacted, but we also have an RMV here, and that would be impacted because we only have one person that lives here year round, and they're not available every day. So that would severely impact our access to the RMV. And I'm glad you brought up the kids' sports. That would really impact their mental health. And I know that's not quantitative, you can't quantitate that, but I really, really worry about kids' mental health not being able to participate in sports.
Yeah, we
you.
put that under the quality of life impacts in the report. Obviously, the report is quite a bit longer than this. It is something that we did touch on. We also did touch on mental health and addiction services for the adult population. That a lot of that relies on the fast ferry to get people to the mainland for those kinds of services, which would be harder to do. I think the hospital folks estimated 40 to 50 patients would just be alone would be impacted just by the behavioral health restriction, the difficulty of moving people to mental health care and behavioral health crisis services.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to ask any questions or for clarification? There will be a substantially more robust report being issued tomorrow. But we just wanted to give the public a heads up on what's coming. And this will be submitted to the appropriate authorities. Oh, Wendy, sorry. Go ahead.
Quite all right. I didn't, forgive me if I missed it, but I feel like this would have like a huge impact in our property values. A lot of people just would move. Like a real lot. And the property values would plummet. And so the tax, hit on that, I think. Is there any way to measure a little bit of that? I think it's worth noting.
Yeah, is there a way? Sure. I mean, with assumptions, anything can be measured. The question is how comfortable you feel about those assumptions, right? So I do think, to put it very bluntly, the only way to make property affordable in Nantucket is to make Nantucket an unattractive place to be, right? So, the supply of housing versus the demand of people who want to live there is, quite mismatched. So if you have a scenario where it becomes a less attractive place to live year round, because of these various things, then I do think that would put some downward pressure on property values. Whether that would do anything to the seasonally vacants, I don't know. A substantial share of housing on Nantucket is seasonally vacant. That's their second homes and so on. And so whether it would impact that market, which does tend to seem to do a lot of the price setting on the islands, given that the median home value is multiples of the average income of the average resident, clearly the price is being set by something else. So that's where it gets a bit thorny, is if it just makes it less attractive year-round residents, would more second home buyers just scoop up those homes? And that's a tough question. I don't know how that would pan out, but that is definitely something that could happen.
I can imagine a scenario where not being able to get your home repaired during the off season would make it really unattractive to be a seasonal resident here. Or if all of the year-round workforce leaves, there's no one to support the experience of a seasonal homeowner or seasonal resident. So, I mean, quantifiable is a good question, but Wendy, your point is, it's well made.
Yeah, I think
Matt?
the total taxes wouldn't necessarily go down because the levy limit is the levy limit. We might not have new growth, and if the high end dropped in value in comparison to the low end, then the people on low end could be paying a lot more, in which case then they would be potentially forced off the island. So that, so I do think there's a thread there that you could, follow and make an argument. And I think just in general, thinking about this, what you're describing is the Nantucket that we grew up in. Yeah, the 50s and 60s. Yeah, and Nat was around when there was no off-island sports, and and that it'd be open July 1st. You'd be busy from July 1st to Labor Day, and then the island was empty. And so that's what we're describing. It's interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the way I've been thinking about it to that point is, the island has developed around these fast ferries for the past 30 some odd years. And to me, when we were conceptualizing this, it was almost like imagine there was a bridge and the bridge is not there anymore, and what does that do to the ability to come and go to this place, and what does that do economically? That was sort of conceptually where we started and how we thought about this, and because it is, those fast ferries especially are kind of like your version of a bridge to the mainland.
We have someone at the mic. Just remember to state your name. Peter.
Peter Schaefer. I don't know how you take into account the medical situation. There's many medical things that can't be done on this island that you have to go to either the Cape or to Boston for. And right now you can do that in one day without staying over and without going crazy and paying ridiculous airfare. How do you account for that in the numbers?
We did not account for them in the numbers. We account for them in the quality of life section in the report, but we didn't try to measure the economic impacts of that. They are real, but again, going through and figuring out what is the cost of avoided care, those are just things that, that in and of itself is a months-long study. So we tried to address it qualitatively in the quality of life section, that just there would be reduced access to specialist care, both on island and off, from the difficulty of coming and going.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anyone in the public online want to ask any questions? I'm not seeing any hands up. Okay. Thank you, Rod. That was great. I look forward to reading the entire report. If there's nothing else, we could, and PNEDC could have a motion to adjourn. Someone online wants to unmute and make that motion.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, so I heard Wendy and,
Dave.
okay, and Dave. Leslie?
Madam Chair, before you all adjourn, I believe a letter was drafted for the Select Board and the NPDC to jointly sign.
Oh,
So
it's just, it's not in the packet. It's just a letter conveying the report to our federal and state representatives, which was discussed early on when we were objecting to the rule. So it's really, I think Leslie's just pointing out, there's a letter that's going to be going out to this group tomorrow with the report.
okay. So no need for action. Thanks, Leslie. Okay, so on your behalf, Mr. Chair, I took a motion and second.
And all those in favor for adjourning? Dave?
Aye.
John? Is he still on there? Oh, okay. Abby?
Aye.
Christina? Wendy?
Aye.
Mike? Joe?
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Okay,
Thank
thanks. And Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have called to order the county,
No, we got to adjourn the county commissioners first, sorry.
and then go back into it?
Yep,
Okay.
we do.
Do I have a motion to adjourn this part of county commissioner?
So moved.
Moved by Dawn, second.
So- Okay,
All those in favor?
Aye.
aye, okay. And then I would ask for a motion from Select Board to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, so we've adjourned the tri-board meeting, and now I'm going to turn it over to the Chair of the County Commissioners to, Rick, I'm sorry, we're adjourned. I missed your hand, but we're out, so.
Got it. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll call to order the December 18th, 2024 meeting of the County Commissioners. The announcements are the County Commission meeting is being audio and video recorded. Item number 3 is public comment for items not otherwise under our agenda. Just note that we will also have Select Board public comment when we get to that part of the meeting. Is there any public comment for county business?
Rick Atherton, is your hand up for public comment for the county? Well, if it's not, yeah, okay.
Rick, you need to unmute.
Excuse me.
me. No, it was for the prior session. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Seeing none, I'll move on to new business. I believe there's no new business. Item number 5, approval of minutes and warrants. Approval of minutes from November 20th, 2024, and payroll and treasury warrants. Is there a motion to approve all three?
So, Mr. Chairman.
Or both?
Second.
Moved by Malcolm, second by Matt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Item number 6, official business, applicant introduction / review of applications and appointments of Nantucket member of Steamship Authority Governing Board pursuant to Select Board Committee appointment policy. We have one applicant, Robert F. Ranney, who is here tonight, who is our current Steamship Board rep. Rob, is there anything you would like to say?
Thank you, Rob Ranney. I am reapplying because I'd like to continue serving Nantucket. I've put Nantucket and its traveling public in the forefront of the Steamship Authority and how it conducts itself, and I hope to continue to do that. Thank you.
I have a question.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, Matt?
Yeah. Is there any truth to the rumor you're going to be driving the ships this summer, that we're running out of captains?
I wish I could. I would love to. Anything I can do to help.
Thanks, Matt.
So I just want to say this is a 3-year term. The current term expires December 31st, 2024. So this would expire December 31st, 2027. And it's up to you to make a motion to appoint.
I would move to appoint Mr. Ranney to another term.
Second.
Moved by Brooks, seconded by Matt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Thank you for your service, Rob. Appreciate it. Next up is item 7, commissioners' reports, comments. Do any commissioners have any comments at this time? Seeing,
I'll just say one, since we're on the steamship theme. I was able to go, as was the entire community, invited to tour the new MV Barnstable freight boat. And it's beautiful. It's beefy is the way I would describe it. It's wider. We got to go up into the, Rob, what's the word I'm looking for? Bridge, and meet a bunch of the crew. And I think we're going to be really pleased with both the space available and the condition of the vessel is it's fully refurbished. It's beautiful. So we're looking forward to that coming on service in early January. They're going through all of their reviews with the Coast Guard, testing, and then doing more crew prep and training before they start up in January. So did I get that right? Excellent. So that was really fun. And there were some kids there, and they seemed to be having a great time. So that's it.
good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn, county commissioners?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dawn, second by Malcolm. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned, Madam Chair.
Okay. So I will call to order the December 18th Select Board meeting, our regular meeting. We'll accept the agenda as printed and go to announcements. Do you want me to?
This meeting is being video and audio recorded. And Erica, you were going to do the committee one?
Sure, thanks. So we still have a bunch of vacancies. This is round 3. Capital Program Committee, we have 1 seat available and 1 applicant, Caroline Baltzer. Council for Human Services, we have 1 seat available and 0 applicants. Council on Aging, 1 seat available, 0 applicants. Cultural Council, 1 seat available, 0 applicants. Real Estate Assessment Committee, we have 1 seat available and 1 applicant, which is Jesse Bell. Zoning Board of Appeals, we have 1 seat available and 1 applicant. The applicant is Lisa Botticelli, who is a current alternate member, so if appointed, we will need to then fill her alternate seat.
Okay, thanks, Erica. Next up is master plan update, and there's a headline, Help Shape Nantucket's Future. There is currently a survey online where you can share your thoughts on the master plan with the community survey. I've taken it. It's very comprehensive, and we really would like to have input as broadly as possible among year-round residents, seasonal residents, and really get everybody's perspective on how you feel where Nantucket is and where you'd like it to head in the future, which is the point of the master plan. So hopefully I've captured that. And there's a link in tonight's agenda. If you go online, you can link right to it. It's being pushed out on social media and the town website, and it's everywhere, so you should be able to find the link easily. And then the other thing is you're invited to host a kitchen conversation, which is a small group discussion that you can facilitate from your own kitchen, office, coffee shop, or anywhere. Gather a group of friends and neighbors to talk about Nantucket's strengths and challenges and help update the master plan. So this is just another way to give input and have it come out of a sort of a group conversation, and maybe sharing ideas with folks that whose opinions matter to you or you're curious about, and then sharing that back through. And Meg Trudell has a packet available to help you facilitate these conversations, and she can be reached by email at mtrudell, Trudel, at nantucket-ma.gov. And we invite everybody to do that, whether you're here on island or home in Connecticut. If you want to gather a bunch of your Nantucket-connected friends and have one of these conversations, please do. So the more input we get, the better.
Can I comment?
That's the
And
theme. Sure.
I looked at it today. I had Megan send it to me, and it was great, and it was fairly easy to do. It's very clear. So anyone that feels like they want to do it should be able to very easily do it. I think it's great. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it. I have to ask Sheila because she's in charge, but I might, but we'll see. But thank you.
Okay. Next up is I'd like to recognize Michael O'Mara's service on the Zoning Board of Appeals. On behalf of the town of Nantucket, I'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Michael O'Mara for his 38 years of exceptional service to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Many of those years he served as chair. As Mr. O'Mara participated in his final meeting last week, I want to recognize the profound impact he has had on the ZBA, bringing his wisdom, professionalism, and steadfast dedication to the work. Thank you, Mr. O'Mara, for your remarkable service, and we wish you all the best in the next chapter as you have all that free time. And then on the same note, I just want to say my friend Janet Schulte is online, and I wanted to acknowledge that tonight is her last meeting in her service as a town employee attending a select board meeting. So Janet, best to you in your next endeavors as well as you move into official retirement. Do you want me to do the rest of the announcements just because I'm on a roll? Okay. Town offices will be closed on Wednesday, December 25th in observance of Christmas, and Wednesday, January 1st in observance of New Year's Day. There will not be select board meetings on Wednesday, December 25th or Wednesday, January 1st, thank goodness. And the select board will hold a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 26 general fund budget on Wednesday, January 8th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. in the Public Safety Facility Community Room right here at 4 Fairgrounds Road, and through remote participation via Zoom webinar. Okay. Any other select board comments or announcements? Okay, I'm going to just keep talking. The Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, which is the federal regulators overseeing Vineyard Wind and the blade turbine crisis, have agreed to hold a public information session via Zoom webinar on January 14th. And we're about to push out through the communications department a link where the community can email questions for BSEE officials regarding Vineyard Wind. And you will email them directly to the email address provided. They must be submitted by December 30th to give the BSEE officials time to research and have really thorough answers to the community's questions about the Vineyard Wind project. And that can be sort of anything about their role in Vineyard Wind related to the blade turbine crisis and the aftermath and the regulatory decisions since then. So I want to encourage the community to, when the email address gets posted, to send those questions and register in the link that will be provided to come to the meeting. It will not be a back and forth kind of situation. They agreed to come only if we submitted questions in writing. So those are the parameters of their willingness to come and meet with the public. So the select board will be holding that joint meeting and facilitating that opportunity for the community to hear from our federal regulators. So I'll leave that.
Brooke, for the public, what is their role? Just give a quick, what is the role of Bessie and, because they're taking up they're in, and if we don't do it perfect tonight, it should be on.
Yeah.
It should be on the link so people know.
So Bessie's role here is in the enforcement of the regulations surrounding offshore wind in this case. They do a bunch of other things too, but in this case, offshore wind. So they are the agency who has been responsible for evaluating what happened, doing the analysis, the root cause analysis, overseeing that. And also they have been the ones who've been issuing the orders to Vineyard Wind regarding what they can and can't do out at the site, including their recent decision to allow them to install 3 blades on a new turbine, and all of the requirements, the hoops that they've had to jump through to get back into construction and be responsive to the community's needs. They're also working on proposed debris response plans and amendments to the regulations through the lessons learned in the aftermath of the blade turbine crisis. So these questions can be about what happened, what's happening now, or what do we expect in the future. I would encourage the community to ask everything you want to know, because these are the folks who are in charge. So does that cover it, you think, Matt?
Yeah. How are they protecting us?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And how will they do so moving forward? So,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to quickly note that I think it's absolutely terrific that this meeting got put together. I highly doubt Bessie does this for every community, and I think it's a really good opportunity for the community to get some questions answered.
I think they recognize that Nantucket really is on the leading edge of the impact of offshore wind, and I think this meeting is a recognition of their recognition that we've been highly impacted and we deserve answers. So that's sort of the last of that for tonight. More to come. We don't have any follow-up on public comment, questions from prior select board meetings, and I will now open public comment for items not on the agenda. I see Ms. Perry's hand up online, and then I'll take Curtis at the mic after that. Go ahead, Megan.
Thanks very much, Brooke. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. I just want to give a huge shout out to the ZBA, who did a phenomenal job today at their hearing regarding Surfside Crossing. These members are volunteer members who are giving at least 4 hours per hearing to listen to not only the applicant, but those in the community who may or may not be in opposition of this project. And I thought they did a great job listening to everybody, asking important questions, holding the developers' feet to the fire. Additionally, they did not limit public comment to any time frame, no 3 minutes and we'll cut you off. And that was backed up by town council, who also supported not cutting off the public from speaking and giving their opinion. So huge shout out to those guys. I thought they did a great job. Specifically, Lisa Botticelli, who I know is applying for a full seat. So I would support that because she had a lot of good things to say. Lisa Allen also was just really great. Jim and Donnie did a great job. And the chair was very kind in not limiting public comment, and deciding that in the future they are going to have a more detailed agenda, which is great. It was also nice to see George Pucci from Town Council back there, not only supporting the ZBA, but properly advising them on how to best move forward in this process. So again, great job by the ZBA. You all should watch that meeting. It was it was really nice to see a board listen to the community. So thanks to the ZBA.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Curtis?
Hi, Curtis Barnes, and I want to echo Meg's comment. I was at the meeting, and I thought it was very, very well handled. But I also want to say, if you didn't go look at the new boat, you missed something wonderful, including a free hat and a great print of the boat. It's really going to be helpful and very pleasing, and it was great to meet the crew. And I also wanted to say I did do the survey on the master plan, and it is well put together, easy to do, so I commend that and recommend it to anyone who hasn't done it yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Gail Holgate.
Gail, can you pull the mic down a little so we can hear you?
Sure.
There you go. Thank you.
Is that better? Yep, thanks. Okay. And with me is Jim Barrows, Barbara Burgo, and Clifford Williams. We're here to update the Select Board and the community on the process to hire an investigator for the town's investigation of the African Meeting House slur. We wrote a responsive email to Erica Mooney with a carbon copy to Select Board Chair Brooke Moore and to Town Administrator Libby Gibson. And that was on November 17th, 2024, confirming that we received a previous email from Erica Mooney detailing the agenda and minutes of 9 prior Select Board meetings when the African Meeting House Article 36 was discussed. However, that did not answer our primary questions regarding the town's investigation process. One, when and, so the questions are, one, when and by who was it that determined that the RFP was not required? Two, if in fact the paid investigator or investigative organization can be selected only by a scope of work. So that, I should have ended work. Who decided the questions in that previous scope of work would be written by Brooke Moore and Chief of Police? Who decided that? And correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you for your questions. We don't respond in public comment, so we'll get back to you.
Okay.
So good evening again. My name is Barbara Burgo. I'm a resident of Brewster and former chair of the Barnstable County Human Rights Commission and former commissioner of the Brewster Housing Authority Commission. I'm here to join Gail in urging that the questions she's asked be efficiently answered as soon as possible. On November 18th, Erica Mooney responded to us with a CC again to Brooke and Libby that, quote, I will look into your questions and get back to you. So we were encouraged. But to my knowledge, neither Gail nor I have heard from Erica since November 18th with the answers to our questions. In keeping with Select Board Vice Chair Fee urging us to continue this process as expediently as possible, and with Christmas and New Year's coming up ASAP, like we see, like you have said, we know that you will be closed for the next couple of weeks. So I felt the need to return here tonight and give you this update as we enter into 2025 with no resolution of the investigators' hiring in sight. I was told that the staff at the town hall has a collective 30 years of knowledge on these types of subjects. So this is clearly not rocket science, the person said. Along with the 2 previous questions Gail has asked, I would like an answer to how do we proceed from here? Thank you, Selectwoman Holgate and all the Select Board for holding up that process 2 months ago and saying we need to revisit it with confidence in each other. May I remind you that Article 36 was voted upon by a majority, and can we now either revert to what they voted on in that article, or do we now need to get together with another group, Gail and myself and whoever would like to join us, so that we can have an open process to developing the questions, to posting it, like you said, on the website or anywhere, so that we can get a full response, greater response than the 3 that the chief of police recommended through private emails. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Tucker?
Tucker Holland, citizen. We see a lot in this room. If you happen to be in this room here on Monday at 5:30, you got to see this room, in my opinion, at its absolute very best. Several dozen boys and girls were recognized by our local scout troop and Cub Scout pack for their individual work and achievement in scouting. In front of an audience of over 100 fellow community members, they stood tall and provided a shining example to us all. 2 scouts in particular, Forbes Keating and Ben Zinsser, were recognized for reaching the ultimate rank of Eagle Scout. Only 4% of scouts go on to reach this rank. It is the result of years of personal effort and dedication alongside the steady and reliable support of their scoutmaster, the other scouting leaders, their troop, their family, and ultimately their community. Sitting in this room that evening, it would be difficult not to be brimming with gratitude for scouting's values. Therefore, I would simply like to take a moment to congratulate all those that earn new ranks and badges, and importantly, to thank Scoutmaster Jason Zinsser, his fellow leaders, and all the scouts here on Nantucket for what they quietly and steadily go about providing to our young men and women and to this community. I was reminded on Monday that when the tenets of scouting, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent reverberate within this room and within each of us, Nantucket is at its best. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker. Okay, not seeing no other hands raised or people at the mic, we will move on. We don't have any new business tonight. Next up is approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. We should probably take minutes and warrants first.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. And moving on to pending contracts, I've asked the finance director to talk about, Libby, do you want to introduce it or do you want to?
Sure, it's the contract with Hazen and Sawyer, I believe. For the sewer department, it's a pretty significant contract. It's for design and engineering services in support of Phase 2 upgrades to the Surfside wastewater treatment facility. It is adding $1.3 million to a contract of a little over $500,000. And because it's so significant, we asked the finance director to review the purpose for that increase.
Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, the original contract was for approximately $500,000 was for the Surfside wastewater treatment facility upgrades, Phase 2. You'll remember we I think about 2 years ago, we completed phase one, which was about $8 million worth of upgrades to the plant, knowing at that time, because of the appropriation that we had and some of the changes that we had to make and reductions that we had to make in what we were able to do, that we were going to be coming back for phase two. It's really, this phase is really a two-part contract, so it's not something that was, that caught us by surprise. We purposely, with Weston and Sampson, who is the owner's project representative overseeing this process, undertook, the first part of this was essentially is a feasibility study to examine how the first phase of the upgrades was performing in relation to our expectations, a review of what any additional requirements either through DEP were for operation of the plant, as well as what the sewer department thought that was needed to continually operate the plant efficiently. So what we did was, they did this feasibility study and developed a basis of design for the phase two of the upgrades. So it lays out all of the upgrades that the sewer department thinks that we need and how we integrate phase one into all of those. It was reviewed by Weston and Sampson. There was numerous meetings between Hazen, Weston and Sampson, and the sewer director to get to that basis of design. From that basis of design, we authorized Hazen and Sawyer to present a level of effort for the actual design effort all the way through bidding services for phase two. That was reviewed by not only the sewer director, but again by Weston and Sampson, specifically Dan Sheehan, who has been involved in numerous sewer projects on the island, was involved in the first phase of the upgrades when they became the OPR for that phase. He reviewed that level of effort for, as I said, for the design work all the way through bidding and is comfortable with it. So that's where that increase is coming from. So we really took a measured two-phase approach to getting to the design. So that's why this is an addition to that original contract in a larger number.
Thank you. Any questions from the board on any of this or any other pending contracts? Or a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Town managers report.
Thank you. First off, we have an overview of proposed amendments to our traffic regulations and a request to schedule a public hearing to consider amendments to these regulations. This is something that's been worked on with the chief and the transportation program manager. I think Mike is going to take us through this, and we would encourage you to ask questions about this. And if there are specific pieces of information you would like us to gather in advance of the public hearing, that would be good to know. Mike?
Thank you, Livy, and thank you, Madam Chair. And I believe, I can't really see the room right there, but I believe Chief Casper might be able to help me on any questions that I can't answer. Erica, if you could scroll down to the slide deck that I think is...
Mike, Chief Casper is here to confirm.
Fantastic. And
Where do you want me to be?
it's way down at the end of this slide deck, or the attachments. If it's easier, I can go ahead and share my screen. I'm kind of loaded and ready to go. And well, you're getting right there. Okay, you're there.
Sorry, I forgot about this. There we go.
Groovy. All right. So thanks again, everyone. As you know, you just saw scrolling through a bunch of redlined documents with edits. That's in the packet for review. I have a slide deck here that hopefully summarizes all those changes. And like I said, we can answer questions at the end of the presentation. The Two Fairgrounds commuter lot has been closed for a short period this winter. And as part of that closure, police did have to deal with a large number of abandoned vehicles, which has been an ongoing issue, along with understanding the actual utilization of that lot. As you know, the select board also has a strategic goal to implement parking management principles in the downtown area. This will improve enforcement of utilization of not only the Two Fairgrounds lot, but ultimately implement the parking management principles downtown. Staff is recommending a public hearing for a variety of the changes to the parking regulations and the enforcement plan. Next, please. There are two sets of changes. The first is to the parking regulations, which does provide a legal framework for traveling on any public way and includes parking restrictions, listing all the permitting types and the enforcement authority. The second set of changes is to the enforcement plan, which specifies the seasonal strategy for each parking asset, which includes off-street parking, municipal parking lots, and on-street parking spaces. Next, please. The first changes to the parking regulations are adding a definition and restrictions for municipal paid parking lots and a definition for a third-party parking management vendor who would assist the town in processing parking payments. Another change is aligning the maximum parking times for on and off-street parking so that both are 96 hours or 4 days. This reduces the maximum parking time within municipal lots from 7 days to 4 days. The language that allows for future parking management is in 375.12L, which adds new language that, except as otherwise prohibited, a driver may acquire additional parking time exceeding what is provided on the posted time restriction in time restricted areas, provided that a fee has been paid to the town. For now, this regulation simply allows the ability for a driver to acquire additional time, and the chief of police will not allow this ability to take effect until details have been acted on by the board. You might recall staff had previously shared a variety of decision points that needed to be acted on so that police and the parking management vendor had direction they needed for enforcement and for providing that service. Other changes included the ability for police to restrict overnight parking in most municipal lots. I'll review those in detail in the next slide related to the enforcement plan. The new parking permits that are part of the regulations are there for residents of Waite Drive, so that parking along that public way can be restricted for the use of the residents there. And there are a number of other edits to tighten up language to improve enforceability of regulations and to describe proper dates of regulatory time frames rather than using common holiday names. Next, please. For the enforcement plan, the parking.
Mike, I feel like we're one slide off here. Yeah. Can you go back? Go forward now. Are you on core parking district?
Yes.
Okay. We were just one slide out of whack over here, so it's okay. We're good now.
Apologies for that. For the enforcement plan and the parking districts in the downtown area, staff recommends that the core parking district remain 1 hour parking year round rather than allowing 2 hour parking in the winter months. This will accommodate the community's year-round parking demands in the downtown area. It'll remove any confusion and complication with enforcement, and it'll also allow for future parking management in the core area spaces and avoid switching of the numerous posted time restrictions on the different placards. Enforcement times are also recommended to be year-round. The standard for the summer is 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Rather than the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. that happens in the winter months. This change is recommended for those same reasons as the 1 hour parking changes. And so there are no other recommended changes for the other parking districts. The residential parking permit district is still restricted to 2 hour parking in the summertime, but not in the wintertime. Commercial parking district still restricts commercial vehicle parking on off-street areas within that district, and there's no recommended changes for now for the taxi and loading zones. Next, please. Municipal lots. Yep, that's what you're seeing. For municipal lots, the enforcement plan will specify that overnight parking will be prohibited in beach lots as if posted. The Silver Street lot will restrict overnight parking without a permit year-round rather than allowing non-commercial vehicle parking overnight in the winter months. There are no other changes to the town lot at 37 Washington Street. Overnight parking will still continue in that lot as it's currently done in the winter months, but it will be limited to 4 days. And there are no other changes to the town pier, Washington Street extension parking areas. Next, please. For the new municipal paid parking lots, the enforcement plan will only include one lot, the 2 Fairgrounds Road commuter lot. Hourly and overnight parking will be allowed for all vehicles, including commercial, provided that a parking fee has been paid to the town. This change, along with other future gating improvements, will help enforcement monitor the lot's usage and duration of the parked vehicles. The changes to this regulation will allow for, police to tow any vehicle that has multiple expired time citations and they're considered to be abandoned. Next, please. The recommended seasonal enforcement plan is provided here with the seasonal detail for parking districts, municipal lots, and municipal paid parking lots. These are summarized in the table to hopefully be clearer for the public than referencing the regulations in the enforcement plan. Next, please. These changes are anticipated to take effect on February 1st, 2025, when the 2 Fairgrounds commuter lot is anticipated to reopen. To proceed with the implementation of these changes, staff recommends the select board advertise a public hearing on, I believe this is correct, January 22nd, 2025. And as I said at the beginning, the police chief or I can answer any questions the board may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I guess, so I have a couple if no one does.
Go ahead.
So Mike, so the only lot that you're talking about charging in initially is out here, right?
At 2 Fairgrounds, correct. That's the only one right now.
Okay. A couple thoughts. One of the things that I've heard a lot about is the Washington Street lot being full up with commercial vehicles that, that barely leave. And so is there any consideration for that lot? Changing that so that the commercial can't stay there constantly through the winter and anything like that, or no?
And which lot is it you're referencing? I'm sorry.
Washington, the town lot, Washington Street?
For
It is.
commercial.
Okay. Hang on.
Yeah, sorry.
So to clarify, the Washington Street town lot,
The Washington Street town lot, one of the complaints I've heard is that there are a fair number of vehicles, commercial vehicles, so that when residents go down to park to go on the boat for the weekend, it's full of commercial vehicles. And so they're there, and I know they're not supposed to be, but they're there and they're taking up a lot of spaces supposedly. Now, I haven't driven through, I haven't checked it myself, but this was something that came to my attention today. And if we're going 96 hours, and if we're not charging, the other thing is just from a philosophically, the most, this is the furthest lot and the hardest to get to, and we're charging. It actually should be in my world, it should be the other way around. We should be charging for the most convenient spaces downtown and having the places further away free. I understand why we're doing this, because we've driven so many trucks and so many people out to this area. As soon as we closed this, they filled Waite Drive and they went over to, other places. So I know that we've driven them and got some of them out of town. They're kind of coming back now. If you look around, Cliff Road and areas, a lot of the trucks are there longer again. They're kind of working their way back into the fabric. But I think, so anyway, if this is a first step and we're going to do this as a test and then we're going to do it elsewhere, I think that would make a lot of sense.
okay. So comment more than a question.
Well, it was a comment, it was a question, but that's. Okay. Yeah. The other thing is, when you're doing this, some of these, there's permits, you're allowed to park if you have a permit. Do we check the number of permits versus how many spaces there are in that lot?
Do you mean
Chief-
in the town
Chief's getting
pier
up.
parking lot?
Yeah, well, there's.
Right
there's
across from the
there's-
town pier?
Yeah, there's town pier permits that you're allowed, there's Silver Street permits, if you have a permit for Silver Street, you can park different than someone else.
Well, if you're on Silver Street, you can only park there with a permit if you live on West Dover.
Understood, but
So-
what I'm asking, how many spaces are there? And do the spaces match the permits? Because what I'm worried about is I think sometimes we've given out more permits than there are spaces. And when you give a permit, someone thinks they're getting something, and then they show up and they're complaining because they don't have it. I think a lot of the numbers that we're working on are 20 years old, and what worked 20 years ago with allowing people to be in the Washington Street lot longer and be there certain hours, it's way different now. There's so much more pressure on the resource than there was then, that I'm wondering if we're looking at the numbers of permits. It's the same with the residential permits downtown. I think there's a lot of permits given out for not that many spaces. Someone leaves their space, they can't ever get it back, you know? They leave Lily Street and it takes them, you know, a week to get their space back. Well,
Hang on.
so it's just, so I'm just saying, in general, are the permits, you know, are we checking numbers of permits that are allowed versus capacity?
I would say two things. One is that I'm not aware of any complaints we get where people we've issued permits to have come to us and said, I can't get into the space that I wanted to get in that you gave me this permit for. And the other is, I think all of us that have been involved meeting, talking about these issues have stumbled across some other issues, but we had to just say, okay, let's work with our top priorities first. Since Two Fairgrounds has been historically a very problematic lot. We have a lot going on in there, and I think it makes it unique from some of the other lots. It does seem kind of counterintuitive to charge people to park here versus in the downtown area. But we have people that are living in cars, abandoning vehicles. We're having some business activity occur in there, conducting oil changes. There's a lot going on in there, and it's just difficult for us to monitor and stay on top of. So that's why we thought this is the perfect opportunity while the lot is empty to establish the new rules and kind of work on some of those other things that you're talking about later on.
And I was going to say, just, it feels to me like what we're doing is we're amending the regulations in anticipation of being able to take some more thorough action in the future, but we're just getting the wording right to allow for the things that you think will be helpful in the future through one public hearing, rather than actually initiating all those policies. We're just doing language changes to clean up.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. I think this is a good test lot to see how the community feels about paid parking. Does it work? And how is the vendor that we end up getting? Can we control parking going in? How is enforcement? So this is a good test lot for that. And this language definitely opens up opportunities for the future.
Thank you.
No, I support it from that perspective. You know, I believe that we are not valuing the public parking that we have. I think that there's too much of it that is, you know, that we're not putting the proper price on it. I think it's overused. I think that people are leaving cars. I had calls from Cliff Road with the same cars there for a week at a time. They had a residential sticker, but they never moved, and the same house had 4 cars parked on the sidewalk there. So the neighbors were upset, but there really wasn't much we could do. It was quote unquote legal. And so I think that I think this is a good first step. I support that. Another comment I heard is, if we're going to allow them to stay longer, does that mean that just people who want to pay can just pay? Because this person thought it was going to be this lot and another one. So if it's just out here, they're worried that, well, someone can sign up and they can just stay there forever. And so we have to sort of think, has that been sort of thought through? Or
We did talk about whether or not to put a cap on the amount of time in Two Fairgrounds, and ultimately we landed on no, because there are people, we don't want people, if someone's going to go away for 2 weeks, we need to give them some option of somewhere to put their car. They'll be paying for it there. We hope that they won't be paying very much. I don't think this is not a goal to make money. It's simply a goal to have accountability for cars that are in there and force car operators to kind of re-engage with the system. And however that will work with the vendor, you'll have to kind of re-up and buy more time basically. But if we cap it, then it can be a problem for people who might be looking for 2 weeks while they're away on vacation and they only have public street parking. So we opted for this lot to not have a cap on it and see how that works.
Right, and that, a few years ago, we extended the parking district around Sunset Hill, the oldest house. And the reason we did is that some of the neighbors were renting their house and leaving for 2 weeks, and they would just pull their car out, because you can't rent your house with a car in the driveway, when they parked it in front of the oldest house. And so there was no way to stop it. And so now what's happened is, just outside of that district, like Brant Point now, we've driven a lot of long-term parking. We've driven the Turo people and others into Brant Point. We've driven them up to the cliff just outside of the parking district. There's a lot of pressure now, which, is what happens if you add, 400 cars every year. They have to go somewhere. And so I think this is a good start, and I think we should be doing it, but I hope that we get to paid parking and we get to valuing it everywhere sooner rather than later. So
I definitely have heard that feedback about that neighborhood and just kind of the outskirts of the paid parking areas. So one of the other changes that we worked on in this is the 96-hour rule, which will allow us to just issue a citation and then issue a second one shortly after. The language in our current regulations require 96 hours, then another 96, another 96. It's just from an enforcement standpoint, hard to quite honestly kind of keep track of. So this tightens that up and allows us to write the initial citation and then 2 more in shorter order.
Will you be able to write it if it's outside of the parking district?
Right, the 96-hour one?
Yeah.
So the 96-hour one applies to areas where there's not other listed parking times. So yes.
So anywhere, so if
Yep,
it's
so if you're
just
on.
outside of the parking district?
Yep, Cliff Road, out parked outside of the zone, which I
Sherburne
think ends
Turnpike.
around 10, Sherburne
Yeah.
Turnpike, any vehicle parked there. So we would get an initial call, probably the vehicle would have already been there for a little while.
Yeah.
We would make note of it, go back 96 hours later, put the first citation on, and then be able to follow up.
Right, good, thanks.
Yep.
Dawn?
Oh, I was just going to note, I mean, the airport has had paid parking for a while, and it seems to be functioning well. So I think this is a good step. I appreciate that you're not going to cap it. I think that this is meant to be the place where you leave a car longer term when you don't have another place to leave it. And I very much appreciate the fact that now the 96 hours will apply everywhere, because that is a huge problem of it just creeps as we move it out. It was creeping further, so I think that this will work. So I would make a motion to schedule the public hearing.
Okay, great.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, next we've got some Traffic Safety Committee recommendations, and again, I think Mike Burns is going to take us through these. Are you, Mike?
Sure. Would you like to do these one at a time, or?
Yeah, why don't you just,
Sure. The
let's
first,
say burn.
thank you, Erica. The first recommendation is at 4 Traders Lane. This recommendation is to add a yellow line along the sidewalk of the next to the Summer Street Church to remove on-street parking, 2 spaces. Those 2 spaces, exist on the sidewalk and effectively narrow down Traders Lane to a single lane. Believe it or not, Traders Lane is actually a 2-way road. I guess because it gets narrowed with that parking, there's some damage to the fence on the other side of where those 2 parking spaces are located. So staff recommends that the removal of those 2 on-street spaces to improve accessibility and prevent some property damage. I can go to the next one, or
Yeah, let's run through them, and then if the board wants to interrupt with any questions along the way, I'll look for them to draw my attention.
sure.
Question,
And
are we looking to act on any of these, or we?
Yes,
all right.
we're looking to take action on all of
some
them
of the-
tonight.
all these, okay.
Yep, yep.
So the second map shows 2 parking spaces along Step Lane. Staff is recommending the removal of the parking along Step Lane at North Water Street. This is part of the sewer project, and it's I believe it's supported by abutters. The third location is at 3 Willard Street, and the staff recommendation is to add a 20-foot yellow line opposite the driveway at 3 Willard. This request is from the property owner, and it's due to on-street parking narrowing the roadway and making it difficult for the homeowner to access their driveway. The fourth recommendation is at 25 North Water Street. And the recommendation here is to extend the yellow line on the west side of North Water Street, 20 feet south from the driveway at 24 North Water Street. And this effectively removes 1 parking space. And this request is very similar to Willard's. The other property owner has difficulty accessing their driveway with this on-street parking space. The fifth recommendation is at 8 Mill Street. And this is to add a yellow line on the south side of Mill Street, extending 15 feet east from the intersection to North Mill Street. The sixth recommendation is for North Mill Street, and is to add a yellow line and signage on both sides of, I think it's the previous map there. We have 2 recommendations on this map. add a yellow line and signage on both sides of the street to prohibit parking between Mill Street and Candle House Lane. The seventh recommendation is for 58 Fair Street, and this is to designate an on-street parking space in front of 61 Fair Street as ADA parking, and this is per the request of the Commission on Disability. Next, please. Further down Fair Street, there was a Commission on Disability request to designate the last 20 feet of on-street parking near the intersection of Main Street and to designate that as ADA parking. Next, please. Also from the Commission on Disability on Whalers Lane, this is to designate the last 20 feet of on-street parking near the intersection of North Water Street for ADA parking. Next, please. And a resident request or neighborhood request for speed humps along Gold Star Drive. And the staff recommendation is to install a speed hump between 3 and 5 Gold Star Drive per request of abutters. Next, please. And here's some backup data for that. And the on Candle Street, the 11th request is on Candle Street between Salem Street and Washington Street to change a single 15-minute parking space to 1 hour to conform with the rest of the corridor. This recommendation was originally made for the food pantry, for deliveries to the food pantry, but that's since been dealt with in another manner to allow for a temporary blocking of they've acquired a license to block that last parking space during times that they need to load and access the food pantry. So the need for that 15-minute parking no longer exists. Next, please. And this is at 126 Main Street. And there was a request for removal of 1 on-street parking space to allow for a driveway. I should note to the board that this was not recommended as there was no net gain in parking. But as is customary, we still bring the request for removal of parking to the board, although it doesn't conform with what we try to achieve is a net gain of parking in the area. And this is just a parking space for 1 vehicle and a driveway, and there need a removal of 1 parking space. So there's no net gain at this location. Next, please.
Madam Chair, I should recuse from this next one because I'm in a butter.
Okay, yeah, and Malcolm indicated that he's recusing from the step lane one too. Erica I was going to handle that when we got to the vote, but good.
Sure, and this is the 13th request is at 10 Vesper Lane. This is to change 2 parking spaces west of the hospital driveway from 2-hour parking to 30-minute parking. And this was a request, I believe, from the hospital pharmacy due to need to have more turnover of parking and access that pharmacy. Next, please. The 14th and final request is for Washington Street at Salem Street, and this is related to Island Tours. Is it Island Tours? The Highline had requested to the tour company associated with the Highline. I'm flaking on the name of it. This is to relocate the two tour van spaces that were approved last summer that are in front of the greenhouse station to move them back towards Salem Street. And again, this is per the request of Highline and their tour company. I'm happy to answer any questions about any of these 14 recommendations, Madam Chair.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I have a couple questions. Does anyone else have any that they either indicate they wouldn't support or have questions about? Okay, so the one that the food pantry, this one, oh, you just had it up. Having a 15-minute spot there there are some shops, businesses, coffee, et cetera, that having a spot that turns over there has some value. I just wanted to ask the rest of the board whether, since the pantry has solved the issue that resulted in this request or initiated this request, whether we want to reconsider it. Or, I mean, I don't feel strongly one way or another. I just want to bring it up since it's not a problem for the pantry anymore.
And I just wanted to clarify, for the food pantry, they have a blocking permit for that space for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for, I want to say like 6 or 7 hours a day. Or maybe it's smaller than that, but a chunk of time each day.
And where do their customers, where do they park, or where do they
That's where they pull up.
pull up there? Okay.
Yep, they have cones that block it, and when somebody needs to pull in, they pull up.
Okay.
They let them.
So it's both for unloading food and also serving customers. So 6 to 1, half dozen the other to me, I just thought I'd bring it up. And then, Tom, or?
No, I was just going to say, I don't think that we need to have a 15-minute spot there. I think that they're hard to monitor, and they should be pretty selective on where we put them.
Okay.
Should we take these one at a time? Because we may have questions. I have a couple comments or questions about some.
Okay,
in the middle.
let's go back to the list.
Go one at a time and just knock
Okay.
them off.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay. All right, so I'll just. Yep, so Traders Lane, that was a passage of a two-way, and parking's basically happening on the sidewalk, so it's eliminating 2 spots. We good with that one?
Yeah, I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next. Okay, Step Lane. No, oops, didn't mean to throw that at you. Basically, people park right, they block the complete sidewalk, so I'm in favor of this one.
Yeah, I
so-
am too.
Okay, so a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next up. Okay, Willard Street.
Now, are we losing a parking space here with this? Because usually we don't. Are we losing a space here?
There is on-street parking along the west side of Willard Street right there, yes. So the 20 feet would eliminate 1 parking space.
Right.
But Mike, correct me, is this driveway, can they fit 2 vehicles in here?
Yes.
So that goes with the net gain. The driveway has 2. We lose 1 on the street. Pleasure of the board?
I'd make a motion to approve this.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay, Matt's a no. Okay, next up. It's okay. Okay, this is adding converting a space to an ADA.
Motion to approve.
Second.
No, it's.
No.
This is not ADA, this is
sorry.
to accommodate the person that bought 25 North Water
Oh, I'm sorry,
Street.
we're on North Water Street. Sorry. Yep. So this is extending the yellow line to allow the access to the driveway on North Water Street. So this is also a net gain, ultimately. So,
It's a net, this is a bigger issue. It's a net gain to the homeowners. It's a loss to the public. And it's a net gain to the homeowners. And then they go, the way our rules are set up now, they can go and get unlimited, residential stickers so they can park on the sidewalk, on the streets anyway, I think. And so, I just think I'm against it. I think that, I don't like seeing all the yards turn into driveways. And I just think that we need to, so it's.
Can I note on one thing? When the driveway at 25 North Water Street originally was proposed by the previous owner, when he came to traffic safety, he did not request the removal of on-street parking. He said it was fine. The new owner is now requesting that.
yeah, okay. Malcolm? You need your.
What's the feet that I need to be away to recruise myself? That's my street. I'm down the street.
It's up to you.
The other one was right across the street.
It's your call.
Well, it affects my parking, so
So you're welcome to recuse if you
yeah,
think
I mean,
it has a personal impact.
I'm not crazy about it because it affects my parking, but I probably shouldn't vote.
Okay, all right. So Malcolm's recused. John?
I'll speak on it. This is a new driveway.
No, it's an
was-
existing driveway, but it was installed by Gary Wynn
Right.
when he lived there.
It's pretty new. It was installed prior
4 or
to
5 years, maybe.
Okay. But never needed
Correct.
this removed.
Correct.
Yes, it's a
Okay.
request from a new owner.
I'm actually going to make a motion that we don't approve that.
Okay, the property owners got his hand raised, so I'm going to just let him speak.
Mr. Janata, you've got
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, this is Anthony Janata. Myself and my wife Brenda purchased 25 North Water Street on April 7th, 2023. We realized that the driveway, which had been installed prior to our purchase of the home, not only has an incline to the driveway that's so high, but because of a telephone pole, it is impossible to pull a car in frontways as one would normally park into a driveway. North Water is also a one-way street. Across from us is a parking spot that was there before the driveway was installed. That parking spot makes it impossible for anyone to either back in or pull a car in forward to the driveway at 25 North Water. And typically what you see is a car will even go a little bit above the line, almost into the homeowner's driveway space right across from us. We've sent pictures to the town. We've asked for this to be addressed. It's a public safety issue. If anyone is trying to get their car into our driveway, especially during the tourist and high season, it is impossible if there's a car in front of that driveway to get a vehicle into the driveway either backwards or forwards. And it's never possible to get one in forwards. We've made multiple overtures and attempts to the town to have this situation addressed. We're very, very thankful that it's finally seeing the light of day in a transparent manner today. It is a public safety issue. I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope that the chair has provided, as well as the transportation safety manager, who we've been in touch with multiple times, numerous times over the last year, pictures, emails, tried to make conversation. No one will talk to us other than over an email. And this is a public safety issue. And we will be coming back perhaps at some point in the future to address any additional ADA concerns or other on 25 North Water and up and down the street. But it is a public safety critical measure for this board to take to approve the recommendation of the Transportation Board and remove that spot. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions or provide.
Erica she hit the button too quickly. Thank you, Mr. Janata, for your input. Erica, did you want to?
I just wanted to say that the people on traffic safety who reviewed this do not deem this as a public safety issue. This is a homeowner issue. This does not impact public safety.
Okay. Okay. Pleasure of the board? Oh, you did? I missed it. Okay, so Don, I have a motion to deny the request. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 So that request is denied.
Maybe some work can be done on moving the telephone pole.
We have explained that to Mr. Janata at length in our various phone calls that we've held with him, and he hopefully realizes that that is something that he has to engage in National Grid directly. The town is not involved in that process.
Okay, next up.
This one has two, 8 Mill Street, which, Mike, is it this one here?
Correct, and that's there's a stoop right where your cursor is that the homeowner wants access to, and that's what generated the request for a yellow line.
I kind of would like to talk about these next two in tandem because they impact each other, right? It's just this single or all that? I'm seeing a dotted line on coming all the way around. No, that's the second request.
That
Okay, so
is
we're just talking about the
this
one on
Yeah,
on Mill Street.
I think they've got a gate there, and there's, like you said, there's stoop. that
Yeah, so it's just that
it
one
gets
spot
blocked.
is the first item. Okay. Questions or pleasure of the board?
Yeah, I'm fine with one spot there.
Yeah,
for a
it's just
stoop
the
for an
one on
entry.
Mill Street, yeah.
Yes.
So is that a motion?
That's a motion. I'll move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, now we're on to North Mill Street, which is
Who made the
both
request on
sides.
this North Mill for both sides? Is this from the group itself or is this the neighborhood? Oh,
Mike, who put that request forward for North Mill?
I'm going to have to find the original request. I don't recall, but the reason for the removal of the parking is that it's a two-way road and it's extremely narrow. Staff supported removal of those parking spaces for the reason that it's a narrow roadway with two-way traffic that gets obstructed.
Drew, I saw your hand up. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, hi guys, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, Mike said he was going to review his notes, but I think if my memory serves me correct, when we discussed this, the section of North Mill between Kendall House and Mill has two curb cuts and a walkway to the house. And so the other side of the street, for whatever reason, had no parking, but we saw it fit to have no parking on that side as well.
I see. So the park side of the street is already no parking. It's dotted on here. Can someone confirm that?
There is parking on both sides of North Mill in that section.
Okay, so we're removing parking on both sides. Okay.
was there any discussion of leaving it on the park side and taking it on the other? And if so, why not?
There was discussion. It's just an extremely narrow the paved section of the roadway is extremely narrow. I think that might require the split rail fence to be set in a little bit further into the park, and that might create some kind of property impact. So the recommendation for right now is just to remove those spaces since there wasn't an ability to move that fence into the property.
Okay. Comments, questions?
I would make a motion to approve this one.
Do I have a second?
I worry about it because I worry about when people have visitors there and people come over to the various houses there, where do they go? They park on the street. And if we're taking that away, anyway, I get a little worried, so.
I mean, I would support them talking about moving that split rail fence in and then bringing it back on that side. But I would think the homeowners in the area would need to initiate it.
Who owns that? Okay. Okay, so I have a motion on the floor to approve removing parking on both sides. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Ready for a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay, so that's 4-1. Okay, next. Okay, so this is designation of one parking space as ADA by request of the Commission on Disability, correct?
I have a question about it.
Yeah.
Is it right in between, is the ADA going to be sandwiched by parking either side, or?
The yellow is no parking.
Yeah.
So it's one space going where there's currently no parking?
Yeah. Single.
There's currently parking right here.
Okay.
Sorry, there's currently parking where it says one space. And then the
Okay.
yellow line surrounds it, and then this one space would be changed to an accessible parking
All right,
space.
I'll move approval.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that one's unanimous.
And then this one is down by the park. on
Yeah,
Fair
so
Street.
this is by the little pocket park on Fair Street.
I'll move
Motion.
approval.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Whalers Lane, adding an ADA. And this was a request from Commission on Disability.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, who seconded?
I did.
Matt. We're asking you to do a lot over there, Erica.
Gold Star Speed Hump.
So this is a speed hump. The only question I had is, do the direct abutters to the speed hump in favor of this?
That was
So
mine.
I can answer that. When somebody requests traffic calming devices such as speed humps, when they bring it to traffic safety, they actually have to present a petition signed by the abutters. This process has been followed. They actually asked for multiple speed humps. This is a compromise with one.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
So both neighbors, both sides of that are fine with it? All right, yep, good, okay.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
We'll give it to Malcolm. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I'll move approval.
Okay.
Change Candle Street.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, this was a request from a homeowner. It was not recommended. It was not recommended. Yeah. So, pleasure of the
Motion
board.
to deny.
Second.
Tom, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
I'm recused from the next one.
okay. We're on Vesper Lane, converting two-hour spaces to 30 minutes to give more turnover for the hospital pharmacy. I believe that was this one.
I have a question for Mike on this one. Right below, right next door is, or right to the right of this is 1 hour. And so this will become 30 minutes. So is there any point in having it, those two sections be the same, so you don't have three different times in one short area? Does that help from a police standpoint or a enforcement standpoint?
I think it's different needs. Down here is, Select Board actually already moved to change this to 1 hour so that people that go to the laundromat have time to go there.
Yeah.
The needs of the pharmacy, there's much higher turnover, so.
Yeah.
And I know that the chief sat in on this,
Okay.
so.
Well, I'll move approval then.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then Washington Street, adjusting the location of the van. Was there a reason for the request? I didn't, Mike?
This location, because they're no longer going to be using the Greenhound facility as a rendezvous point for customers, they're going to rendezvous at the Straight Wharf and then walk up to this location. So it was felt that this was a more visual and accessible location for the customers.
Okay, and it separates public NRTA bus from private bus a little clearer, maybe?
I'll move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Yep. As Don was running back. Okay.
Okay, so,
Yes.
Yep.
ready to go on? Okay.
I think we're good.
So we have several Our Island Home related items next. The first one is review of the fiscal 2026 Our Island Home operating budget, and this really is nothing to do with the new facility. We decided that since we were doing other Our Island Home items tonight, we should just put the budget in here as well. You will be getting other enterprise fund budgets for fiscal 26 at a later time. So I think that Peter, the administrator, Mr. Holden, will be doing the presentation.
Thank you, Select Board, for letting me do this. I appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to go into a little bit of depth here, so there's going to be a change of what we've been talking about previously. We are humbled and honored to provide our residents with the best nursing and rehabilitative care. We strive to connect and collaborate with our healthcare partners to improve healthcare services in Nantucket. We strive to provide rehabilitative and nursing care that is individualized, innovative, holistic, culturally competent, and evidence-based. And we strive to build new and unique opportunities for the residents of Nantucket to age in place. And we also strive to create a work environment for our employees that fosters positivity, growth, education, cultural competence, and teamwork. And we strive always to bring our best. As we move on to department goals, our first goal is to create a comprehensive marketing plan and to expand awareness to the community, off-island medical centers, and hospitals of the available services provided by our island home. As we work on our marketing plan and we reach out to the community and to other organizations on the island, we notice there is a lack of awareness of our island home here, of what we truly do there. It's remarkable. So we are working hard to change that concept. Also, we continue to hire open nursing positions with permanent employees and to strive to stay away from travel agencies. Our third goal is to put systems in place to increase daily census in Medicare admissions by reducing referral response time. And goal 4, to provide higher acuity clinical care training to be able to accept more complex referrals. As we move on to initiatives, we have increased the number of outside activities, events, and venues to our residents. We are working with different providers and organizations in marketing awareness of our island home. We continue to work with design teams on identifying and implementing discipline needs of the new facility. I just want to break from here and recognize Michelle Monroe on all of her work on this aspect. It's a lot of work, and continuing to work with the design team on identifying and implementing the new options as needed on the new facility. Thank you, Michelle. And then moving on, we have to decrease the take-back and penalties associated with CMS and Medicaid audits by implementing additional oversight in-house in conjunction with contracted MDS services. We also have an affiliation agreement, are working on it to solidify it with the Nantucket High School Vocational Program to train students as certified nurses aides. Our current year accomplishments, we have increased our nursing home Compare 5-star rating from 1 to 4. We have increased our average Medicare aid daily rate from $756 to $807 as a result of increased nursing and rehabilitation documentation to capture skills that allow for a higher rate of reimbursement. Our annual Department of Public Health surveys on the standard survey and the life safety survey, the results were as follows. We received 4 minor deficiencies on the standard survey versus the state average of 8 to 9 deficiencies. Also with the life safety survey, we received 0 deficiencies. Also, moving on, nursing department, we are excited to say that we have secured a full-time permanent RN who is an island resident. We are now able to offer 6 days a week of rehabilitation therapy services. And with the addition of a geriatric physician and a behavioral nurse practitioner to the facility, we have vastly improved the quality of care for the resident population and timely documentation, which aids in the increase in Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement. I also want to state with those 2 additions of the geriatric doctor and with the nurse practitioner for behavioral services, 90% of the nursing homes nationwide do not have these services. That's amazing, okay? As we move on to the 5-year outlook, regulatory mandates, our island home is monitoring several pending and current regulatory reform under consideration and for implementation from CMS and the Department of Public Health. These include nursing staffing requirements, COVID infection control, and general increased infection control regulations and reporting. The financial obligations to meet these are unknown currently, as well as a timeline to meet these new standards. For the staffing, this is a...
Excuse me, Peter?
Yes?
Hang on one second. Guys? Okay, thanks.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. Okay, staffing, we're engaging with the LPN and RN program with Cape Cod Community College in Upper Tech to be a clinical site to allow aides to move up and as an option to recruit from that pool of graduates. We would anticipate minimum staffing increases, if any, for the new facility. Moving on for the big ticket capital items, in the next 5 years, keeping in mind with the new facility, there will be items that need to be addressed at the current facility, physical plant's current condition, to ensure we remain in compliance with DPH and CMS and ensure quality of care during construction of the new facility. These are new windows, which we have funds already secured, and we really expect to be complete in fiscal year 26, along with that $75,000 grant we did get awarded to for those windows. Also, the fire doors and fire dampers, repair and replacement, that's to be completed in fiscal year 26. Also, with, it's not mentioned here, but we have the corridor and resident doors inspections, repair and replacement. That has to be completed in fiscal year 26. That was brought up at the life safety conference in Taunton we just had. That will be a focused life safety item on the next inspection going through. Also additional DPH and life safety survey regulations and improvements as identified in surveys. In the next 5 years, should the new facility be placed on hold, the current location that we are will need to complete the following improvements to maintain quality of care and be within DPH and life safety regulations. The new west wing shower, the funds we already have secured. The new generator and shed, we already have funds secured for that. Sprinkler pipes, they're starting to deteriorate, and we're replacing lengths of them as they deteriorate. And our sprinkler head replacements, the last to replace in 2016, and by regulations, we will have to have them tested and replaced. Also, we are at total capacity with IT infrastructure. We will need to upgrade that. We also need to be starting replacement of exterior trim, siding, rake boards, patio and parking lot. Also looking at to upgrade the garage. We're also going to be needing in the future to replace the cedar fencing around the facility, the patio area. Also concerning the kitchen, we will be required to replace the dining and kitchen cabinetry. Also to be in compliance, the wash station sink, the garbage disposal, and the dishwasher. Also, currently, we're going to have to look at replacing the wastewater piping to prevent the backup in the kitchen and south wing due to deterioration and corrosion of the underground pipes. And an electrical needs and installation of an increased capacity with the facility is going to need to be upgraded. Moving on to numbers. We're looking at fiscal year 2025 approved budget with the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget. We're looking at a total expense budget of 10.7 mil. Out of that, the payroll is 7.7 million, and the operating side of the equation is 3 million. And as we move on to our Island Home revenue budget, we're looking at 10.4 million going for fiscal year 2026. And then also the department expenses increase requests. We're looking at the utilities increase of 12 grand. We're looking at utilities electrical increase of 11. I could probably see this, sorry. Utility propane, food supplies of 20, nursing supplies of 20, pharmacy supplies of 10, and then employee housing of 13, I think. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes.
Also, this is all due to inflation and just increasing expenses. That's all I have to report. Any questions?
Malcolm?
I have a couple of questions. So the expenses are going up, and you anticipate the income going up, and is this deficit going up or down or what? It kind of flashed by rapidly there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, if we're looking at our total expenses are going to be 10.7 right, for the million, and we're looking for a revenue budget that I'm gonna have to achieve of 10.4, right? So you're looking at, about 300K around that.
If the income increases.
No, we have to strive for that. That's a mandated to me.
Yeah, I mean, so if you don't, then we still have deficit.
Correct.
Significant deficit.
Yes, but we are striving hard to do that.
I understand. I was just also looking at if the new facility is not approved.
No, I'm just doing both case scenarios.
Yeah.
If or.
No, if it's not approved or delayed, or the new facility, you've got a lot of capital expenses coming. What's that total cost going to be?
Total cost, I have not done that.
Okay.
But we have a lot of those funds secured for a lot of that too.
Okay.
Anything, thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you. Next is going to be the overview of a rate increase. That's going to be done by Bob. Bob, are you there?
I am here. Yes, thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so along with what Peter's talking about, to part of your point, Malcolm, we have not raised the private rates for several years for a variety of reasons, mostly related to COVID. And so we wanted just to inform the select board of our plans to raise the private rating for private pay. That'll be starting in FY 26, July 1st of next year. The first slide shows you the general increase is usually the COLA increase year over year. And you can go to the next slide, we'll show you the competitive analysis compared to other facilities on Cape Cod. So we are already at a fairly high rate for a variety of reasons, of 560 compared to off-island facilities, but there are specific reasons for that. Most of these other facilities are privately run. There's no collective bargaining in most of them. Our recruitment retention expenses are higher, and our general cost of living, on the island is higher. So as we move further into the slide, we're going to show you what we're proposing as a rate increase starting next July 1st. Next slide, please. Considerations in adjusting private rates. It's interesting, in Massachusetts, there isn't any regulation that directly sets your rates. You're free to set it wherever you would like, but the following 4 or 5 areas really drive what we're looking at. They're market driven, obviously, for us, because we're actually considered a rural facility. We're the only facility on the island. So we feel that for that reason, we do have an opportunity to raise the rates. We are licensed as a level 2 and level 3 facility, providing 24/7 nursing care, 5 to 6 day a week therapy, on-site physician visits, as well as other provider services that justify a rate increase. Next slide. Room size, again, and amenities is another area that we look at. The type of facility, we're comparing ourselves to other similar skilled nursing facilities. And there is a requirement to have transparency and full disclosure that we'll talk about in a minute in terms of advance notification of the rate increase. Right now, we include that in all of our admission paperwork, for example, so everybody knows exactly what the rates are currently. Next slide, please. So we looked at 3 different options in terms of evaluating the rate adjustment, and we basically decided on the 3rd option that is listed here. What we'd like to do is a one-time adjustment, 15% increase across the board, starting on July 1st. And for a number of reasons, we're trying to make up for the lack of not having the increase over the last several years. We also realize that as was discussed earlier, we are sort of doing a full court press to try to increase our revenue to match the expenses. Next slide, please. So if we go ahead and do that rate increase to 15%, we're going to do it as a phase-in for the current residents. We'll give a 45-day notice ahead of time. The residents that are currently in-house will see a 10% increase starting in June through June 30th. So we'll sort of gradually increase them. And then starting on July 1st, we will do an across-the-board rate increase, which will go to $644 per day. And then all new admissions after that will have the daily rate of $644. The implementation will meet all the state requirements. We have all the proper documentation. We will set a new policy in place, and we'll be informing people the 45-day notice, and we'll also be notifying all new admissions through the appropriate paperwork in the admitting process. So this is basically just a notification. The requirements as outlined below is what we will be following as part of our new procedure. It's at least a 30-day notice. We're going to do a 45-day advance notice. We need to state clearly the rate, what it is, the effective date, explanation of the reason for the increase, as well as the contact information. And we just wanted to notify the select board with all the other information about our island home that this will be coming forward starting next fiscal year. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
I'll make a comment. I think I always advocate for doing a little bit every year rather than being stuck in that. And when you look at those numbers, you know,
Correct.
this happens when you don't do anything for 7 years. So I always advocate for that. I think the recommendation is, is the right way to do it. I guess one question, have you guys talked about what impact there might be if we're $100 more expensive than elsewhere, $150 a day more expensive, do we potentially lose people that would choose to stay off island or go off island?
We have talked about, a couple of points to make is most of the facilities have also held off on the rate increase primarily because of COVID. So we were really all consumed with moving people, cohorting people, putting people in. So in other words, someone that's not even paying privately would have to be in a private room, that kind of thing. So I think everybody kind of got off cycles. Secondly, most facilities will be raising rates. They're on calendar year. So I don't have the exact rates yet because they're not public, but I do know that Martha's Vineyard, for example, starting January 1 of next year is going to raise their rate significantly. That would be the one that we compare to. So I do think it's going to end up being comparable when all is said and done, and we see what the other facilities will raise their rates to.
Okay, thank you. Pleasure of the board. Do we have to take action? Okay.
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, before Craig starts, I wanted to just re-give an introduction that I've been giving whenever we are talking about the new facility. It seems that people need reminders of why we're doing things and what facts are and voting situations have been. So I just want to let you know that a lot is going on with this project. It has a lengthy history. And I'm just going to go back for you to the 2017 annual town meeting. At that town meeting, the town proposed the acquisition of property adjacent to Sherburne Commons, plus an appropriation for a skilled nursing facility to be constructed there. Those articles were not approved by voters. Following that, in 2018, the Select Board directed town administration to determine what it would take to construct a new Our Island Home facility at the current site on East Creek Road. Thereafter, between 2019 and 2021, we engaged architects to undertake this analysis. We held some charrettes, some of you might recall that. Stakeholders were interviewed and other properties close to the current site were reviewed. We consulted with the Department of Public Health. An analysis of different operating models was conducted. At the board's meeting on August 18th, 2021, it voted to pursue a new Our Island Home facility at the Sherburne Commons site, with the current facility to be repurposed for a senior center, and to put forward articles at the 2022 annual town meeting for design for a new facility. We engaged Brenda Johnson to assist with public outreach and to gather and provide feedback and input for a new facility. And at the 2022 annual town meeting and election, design and associated funds in the amount of $8.5 million was approved. In 2023, the design architect and owner's project manager were engaged, and the board approved the construction manager at risk, called CMR, project delivery method. That approach also requires approval of the State Inspector General. That was granted earlier this year. Using the CMR project delivery method increases the accuracy of cost estimates because the contracted builder is involved in the budgeting phases along with the design team and therefore provides a higher level of cost control. Additionally, the construction manager is contracted to deliver the project at a guaranteed maximum price based on an agreed set of construction documents and specifications. Our contractor is Consigli Construction Company, and they are currently on board. We've been attending our steering committee meetings. The steering committee for this project is myself, Craig Piper, and Dick Webb, even though he's supposedly semi-retired, of SMRT, John Lemieux of Vertex, Bob Eisenstein, who we just heard from of Eisenstein Flaherty Associates, Assistant Town Manager Rick Sears, Finance Committee Member Peter Schaefer, Select Board Member Don Holgate. We also have an advisory committee, and that includes members of Sherburne Commons, Nantucket Cottage Hospital, Our Island Home, Friends of Our Island Home, the Nantucket Center for Elder Affairs, and the Senior Center. And we meet with that group less regularly, but the steering committee is meeting pretty often. We met on Monday, I think, or yeah, this week. We do have a long-term lease that will need to be executed between the town and Sherburne. That lease is subject to, we have a long-term lease, and it is subject to an amendment with Sherburne, and that is the subject of current discussion with Sherburne. We have agreed upon the terms of an amendment, and we are finalizing that now. So Craig, turn it over to you for, this is a kind of a quickish update. I don't think there's too much to update about the new facility at this point, but we want to review a couple of other things as well, and then finish off with the projected operational costs associated with the new facility as Dr. McNabb requested several months ago.
Great. Thank you, Libby. I hope you all can hear me. I'll go as fast as I can to get through it. I think the milestone for us is that we are at the end of the design phase. So we've got more information to share, but at this meeting, I think you've seen a lot of the scope of the project. We are just now getting into more details and have more images. So I'll go through those relatively quickly. The other component of our presentation is to update you on the determination of need process, and Bob's going to walk through that as well. But one of the key pieces of that are the goals of the project, and we have been hitting home our strategic guiding principles, and these are really aligned really well with the DON application. So a lot of the work that we've done really lends itself to where we're heading. Again, the communication phase is the big milestone after our drawings are done. In early January, we're really going to work really hard on public information phase and the communication plan, which is active and starting, but will really go full force in starting in the new year. And this QR code is a link to the town's website for any other updates as folks are going along. The site plan is where we are today. I'm just going to flip through some of the renderings that we've developed since the last time we met in early October. What some of the pieces that we want to really describe and help tell the story is, the building, as we design it, we get the level of detail. And I've talked to this group in the past about, if the roof was pulled off, what would you see in the building? So here's sort of an example of pulling the roof off and looking at the attic space, which has all the equipment and mechanical equipment that's required to run a nursing home with today's standards, and all of that space is in the attic, which can be serviced at the attic level and not in where the residents live. We have the front drop-off area, which is safe and covered for families to be dropped off. The front entrance piece is sort of getting a better understanding of how it's separated from where the residents live and work, and elopement concerns of when the public comes in, they're not right into the clinical areas. Again, we have the nursing center core, but you can start to see the level of detail that we have been working really closely with the staff at our island home and getting to the level of detail that contractors can now accurately bid on the project and fine tune the final construction numbers. Again, I could talk forever on the amenities, but I'll spare you because I know it's been a long night already. But they'll be at the public information meetings in 25. We'll get into a little bit more detail at those open houses. But a lot of the elements that we're developing is similar to what you've seen before, but with a lot more detail. You know, the level of detail in the kitchen and how the kitchen connects to the dining, to the living room, and all the individual spaces that provide the residents choice and meaningful activities. You know, the big piece that we've talked a little bit about is the front door, back door, and having the service be totally separate from where the residents are. So this is actually showing the kitchen and then the service areas to the left. We also have the entire basement of one of the wings that supports the service side and sort of the ability to have more supplies on hand and buy larger, more in bulk, and have areas to store durable goods and dry goods. We do also have some additional shelf space. Some of our milestones, we did get planning board approval with some minor conditions. We are in the process of HDC that has been submitted, and we anticipate our first hearing on January 7th. Libby mentioned the construction budget and the pro forma that Rick and Brian are going to work towards our budget numbers where we are today. But the good news is that we are at the milestone of finishing our work in early January and then starting the bid process to actually get hard numbers on the construction, which is the majority of the project. And so the goal to have that final construction number with actual bids will be April 2nd, and the goal of updating the select board again on the final construction numbers to be ready for annual town meeting of 25, and then ultimately start construction phase. Bob, do you mind taking over the DON?
No, thank you, Craig. So those of you may already know, in some states they call it a certificate of need CON. Massachusetts has a very, very rigorous determination of need process. And to Craig's point, the guiding principles, we've all worked really very, very closely together and collaboratively. So a lot of what's been done in the design plans already is sort of teeing up a lot of the work that I'm putting into completing the determination of need application. And we're sort of sharing all of the parts of that to put it together. But the process in Massachusetts, it's like I said, a fairly rigorous regulatory framework, and it is designed to assess and manage the need for both additional nursing home beds, which is not what we're looking for, and or approve, which is what we're looking at, relocation, and we're calling it substantial capital expenditure. That's what it falls under. The primary purpose is to ensure, as in our case, the new or the expanded nursing facilities align with the state's healthcare planning goals. They respond to community needs, and that they maintain an efficient and equitable allocation of resources. It does require, upon submission, submitting a non-refundable application fee prior to any other design or architect or construction plans being approved. So the timing of all the plans that I know Craig wants to get approved is the DON has to go first, and then hopefully everything will flow very quickly thereafter. They do review each individual determination need application, and they're promising to give a turnaround time within a 4-month period. If anybody's interested, all these things are posted publicly on the Department of Public Health's website, including any current determination of need, approvals, etc. It falls within the definition of substantial capital expenditure, and I think the threshold is 2.8 million or greater. So, for example, the things that Peter was discussing earlier about just kind of routine capital does not need to go through the DON process, only 2.8 million and more. There's 6 factors of need, and I just put this down to give you just a quick snapshot of how detailed this application needs to be. And it starts with a patient profile, which we've already begun. It's a 36-month look back, 3 years, looking at all the variety of different patient characteristics, occupancy, diagnoses, demographics, a financial pro forma projected for 5 years, which I think Rick is going to present in a few minutes, the construction costs, relative merit, community health initiatives, evidence of community engagement, which we already have, as Libby said, we have years and years worth of community engagement. I don't think the department is worried about that issue at all. Miscellaneous attachments such as design plans, et cetera. And again, the bottom line is, which we're already doing, we need to make a clear and convincing demonstration that the proposed project meets the factors that they set forth. There's a total of 6 factors that we have to answer in the application. As was stated earlier, the steering committee, along with my company, SMRT, Vertex, Consigli, we're all working together very closely to gather all the necessary information for submitting the DON. On a parallel track, I think Craig was talking about this, the typical project plan review will only occur once the DON process is complete, and we're working on a waiver for this. Obviously, our goal is to allow all the plan reviews, hopefully to occur, if possible, prior to the ATM vote of 25. So next slide, and that's all I've got on the DON, unless there's any questions about that process.
Malcolm?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. There was something, health needs assessment met. What is that?
Yeah, we've already done, I think there was some surveys that were done on behalf of the town of Nantucket. It's just referring to, in this case, the need would be the need for over 65 population to have what we call skilled nursing needs in a nursing home, basically. Activities of daily living, those kinds of things, as opposed to any other setting. There's been a lot of discussion about home care and assisted living, but this has to prove the need. I think the statistic they use is 3% of the total elderly population over 65 nationally utilizes nursing home beds. So that's kind of what they're referring to. And we have statistics to show that. So we definitely will meet that need.
Okay, and then is this like other hospital construction? In other words, like when the College Hospital was built, there was a requirement of 5% of the capital expense put into community needs?
That's a question that we're going to be investigating. The short answer is yes. The community health initiatives piece, we don't fill that out because that's just for hospitals. So we don't do it in the narrative report, but they do have a requirement, a monetary amount is 3% in this case, but that's something that we're going to be talking to.
I'm sorry, it's a little mumbled.
Oh, there is a percentage for nursing homes that's less than the percentage for hospitals to meet that criteria.
Libby, did you want to address that?
We've had some discussion about this. There is some, for, we believe, private nursing homes, some application financial consideration, an application fee, and this community benefit contribution that Bob is referencing that the hospital went through.
Right.
We have spoken to Senator Sear, who fortunately for us has worked for the Department of Public Health, and requested that we seek an exemption for the town for this, because it is a municipal nursing facility is very different from a private one, and we are, we believe strongly we should not have to pay the application fee, and the benefit is the facility.
Right. So, but
in itself. So we're hoping that we will get an exemption, but we don't know that for sure.
Right.
We may have other things to think about if we don't get it. But we are, Senator Sear's office is working on scheduling a meeting with the Department of Public Health and us about it.
so it's a potential extra cost.
I suppose, yes,
Yes.
it is. We are optimistic that it won't become one, but you never know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'm sorry, I lost some of I got a little mumbled about the health needs that
My understanding is it is a statistical analysis of the age of the population relative. That I think what Bob said is 3% of the population nationally requires nursing home care over a certain age, and that because of the age of our population, we meet that statistical threshold. Did I get that right, Bob?
So it's just a statistical threshold for seniors per se, not a total community assessment.
Yeah. Bob,
Because that is going on to some degree.
yeah.
I
Bob,
hate to see duplication of efforts.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit of both. I've already referenced the community-wide health assessments that have been done to your point. So, and what we need to do is hone it down to make it specific to the over 65 population, specifically to their health needs and why they require a skilled nursing facility.
Just loop with the health department and the hospital because they have.
Yep, they already have
doing
that,
some
yeah.
Work and hate to repeat it.
yep, he's
No,
saying they're already doing that.
Good.
We're already doing that. We're not trying not to duplicate it. Thank you.
Just, I'm sorry, it's either my ears or your microphone. but
No,
it's-
I might be a little bit muffled. Sorry about that.
I forgot to bring my fake ears tonight.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification, Bob. I did miss the qualitative part of that. So, okay. Any other questions? And then we'll move on to projected budget for the new Island home, correct?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, Dr. McNabb requested information on the operational cost of the proposed new facility some time ago, and we have been working on it. As we started to dig into this, we realized that the presentation needed to be deeper than we sort of originally were thinking, and as we started to develop it, we realized more and more things needed to be outlined and contained in the presentation. So Rick's done a fantastic job putting this together with some help from others, but he really put it together. Rick?
Okay, well, we'll see if it's a fantastic job or not. But anyway, okay, so I just put it on this first page. What's a pro forma? Everybody, I know you all know what a pro forma statement is, but I just wanted to flag that it's a forecast. And not only is it a forecast, it's a 5-year forecast, which is a pretty long forecast. You're kind of reaching into the fog. And then on top of that, we're trying to put a forecast together that is across 2 different facilities. So that's even a deeper reach into the fog. So I wanted to spend, before we get to the numbers, a little bit of time on just some qualitative statements about the new Our Island home and just to sort of give context for the numbers so that when we think about the numbers, we think about, oh, the expenses do seem to be under control, but this may crowd out other projects. So if you could just go to the next slide. So what can we say about, Erica, if you could go to the next slide, please. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong. So what can we say qualitatively about the new OIH? So it's clearly going to be a better facility. It's going to improve the quality of care for residents, improve health outcomes, allow islanders to receive long-term health care on the island, be more comfortable in their environment. So those are all sort of like the resident-facing things. And then we will be incorporating best practices for senior care because we can do it in the new building. We can expand rehab services. We'll have updated safety features and modern amenities. If you can go to the next slide. However, the facility will also compete for funding with other prioritized projects. You've heard us talk several times about the collision projects, and some of those are very big ticket items, as you know. And not only will they compete for the funding, but they'll also compete for execution resources. We have a limited amount that we can do. So the new OIH would put some serious crimping into what we can do elsewhere. Obviously, a new OIH will impact homeowners' property taxes, and it'll impact the residents of Sherburne Commons and abutters during the construction period. If you could go to the next slide, please, Erica. And then just a little context on why it's so expensive to run the OIH, current or future. Current, limited economies of scale due to the physical size of the building. We're still only ever going to have 45 beds. So we are going to have limited economies of scale. Obviously, the age of the building requires more update. The low census in the building, which is we've gotten back up to about 36, That's, that's partially due to the dated facility and the lack of private rooms and private bathrooms and the like. So, and then we're unable to scale our workforce to the census due to some collective bargaining restrictions. So we're always staffed, irrespective of how many residents we have, we're always staffed for 45. So that just makes it pretty expensive to run it. Then, like many other departments in the town, there are recruitment challenges. And so in particular with nurses, so we have to utilize travel nurses, and travel nurses are about twice as expensive as a regular full-time town employee who is a nurse, in addition to which we need to pay for their housing. And then from the revenue side, sort of 2/3 of the residents currently are on Medicaid, and each one of those patients requires sort of a daily subsidy from the taxpayer, if you will, of about $500 or $600 a day, each one of those residents. And then finally, as you heard earlier, the private pay rate structure needs to be changed, and we need to get private pay to be covering their expenses. Erica, if you can go to the next slide then, please. So will the new the new OIH should be more efficient to operate. In our pro forma, we have expenses increasing at 3.7% compounded annual growth rate between the 5-year period from 26 to 30. And that equates to about $2.1 million increase in expenses. And then the next slide is around revenues. So we believe that the new state-of-the-art facility will almost certainly lead to increased revenues, better facility, attract more people, attract perhaps more people who can pay privately. And so our pro forma revenue forecast has a compounded annual growth rate of 4.1% or $2.367 million over the period. So just want to, in full transparency, part of that $2.3 million is the operating override, which goes up by $573,000 over the period. And as I just mentioned, we need to look at that private pay rate structure again to try and improve the revenue forecast. And we would need a very significant change in the payer mix overall, not just private pay, in order to close the operating deficit. Erica, please. So I just wanted to just give you a little visual of how tricky this is. So in the red circle on the left is the average revenue per day per payer class. So Medicaid is the first line. The average revenue per day from Medicaid is $244. It was $244 in 2023. And for private pay, it was $511, and it was $947 for Medicare. It costs us down, you see where that arrow points from to the circle, it was $661 a day in 2023. So you see we subsidize an awful lot of the residents. Move to 2024 to the right, and it looks even worse. $721 is the average cost for bed. And there you see $254 is what we get from Medicaid. We get $443 from private pay and $635 from Medicare A patients. So just flagging how tricky this financial situation is. Eric, if you could go to the next slide, please. So before I show you the numbers, I just want to make sure you understand the assumptions that are behind the numbers. Now, this page has assumptions that are not related specifically to the new OIH. They happen irrespective of whether we have a new OIH or not. That is, payroll would increase 3.5% a year. Medical insurance increases 10% every year. General insurance increases 20% every year. Barnstable County obligation increases 10%. Those are pretty scary expense increases. The Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements are modeled at increasing just 2% a year. So you have all your expenses going up double digits, and you have your Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements going up 2%. The private pay rate is going to be increased. It is actually more than $600 a day. You heard that from Bob a little bit earlier. And then finally, we don't include CPE in our revenue calculations. Eric, if you could go to the next slide, please. So then there are some assumptions that are specific to having a new OIH. So these are only in the pro forma from FY 28 through 30, because that's we're saying we're going to be in the new building in FY 28. So the new building is a net zero energy building. So we can, technically speaking, remove almost all the utilities from the budget. So the budget is about $170,000 for utilities. So we removed $155,000 per year. Repairs and maintenance, we decreased from about $75,000 a year to $30,000 a year, because in the first few years, there should be very little repair and maintenance. Improved recruitment because of a better work environment. What we've said is that we're going to convert one travel nurse each year from being a travel nurse to being a full-time employee. And that saves about $100,000 a year. So $100,000 in 2028, then it'd be $200,000 of saving in 29 and $300 of savings in 2030. Because the facility is a little bit bigger, we are increasing the housekeeping staff by 1 employee, and that's added from 2028. And also, just sort of differently, but on the revenue side, we are increasing the census over the period from 36 to 42. The assumptions above, the cost assumptions above, deliver about $300,000 worth of savings each year from 28 to 30. Erica, you can go forward, please. Now, I want to talk about one other little economic benefit, and people may quibble about the analysis, and it doesn't reflect in any of the financial performance you'll see, but I do believe it's a value that we need to at least intellectually agree that there is some value. You might choose to compute it differently, but there's $2.5 million worth of new equipment that go into the new Our Island home. So the useful equipment is usually depreciated over 7 years. So if the useful life of the equipment is 7 years, and on average, your equipment is 50% depreciated, you might argue with that, but then there is an implied savings of 3.5 years of depreciation. So half of the $2.5 million. That's an economic benefit of $350,000 a year. Doesn't show up anywhere in any financials, but it's money that we do not have to spend, or probably do not have to spend, that we would otherwise need to spend in the other, in the current Our Island home. I know that one's a little fuzzy, but nevertheless, I just wanted to flag that there is a benefit of having all new equipment and then having fewer repair and maintenance costs and replacement costs. Next slide, please, Erica. So here's the revenue forecast for the period. So you already saw from Peter earlier, the FY26 budget. The bottom number right there is $10,741,152, which is the same number you saw about a half hour ago. And then you have the out years, and so you see the revenues increased from 10.7 along the bottom to 13.1, and the main drivers are the increased census, which I mentioned, the private pay rate restructure, and then an improved payer mix. So more private, more Medicaid, more insurance patients. So not much to say in there. In here, Medicaid revenue is modeled at up to 2.5%, I think, in the first year, and then 2% after that. And then there's the mix change, the number of people that are in each category. So I think that's all I really need to say there, but it's 10.7 to 13.1. Now, if you could go to the next slide, please, Erica. Here's the expenses. So 10.741, which you saw earlier in the day. So going to 12.8 in the bottom right-hand corner. The main drivers here are payroll increases by 3.5%. We add the housekeeper, and we add 3 travel nurses in that first payroll line. Medical insurance is up 10% a year, $750,000 over the 5-year period. Barnstable up 10% a year, $500,000 over the 5-year period. Utilities down $150,000 a year. I mentioned that before. Professional services is down because we moved the travel nurses out of professional services and up into the salary line. And then general insurance is up 20% a year or $150,000 over the 5-year horizon. So that'll, those are your expenses. I'm going to just, Erica, could you go 2 slides forward and then we'll come back to the other slide? So this is the tally of all of that. So the bottom line, we're going to call it net earnings. We have a balanced budget in 21. In year one, fiscal year 2026, we have the predominantly the private pay rate increase factoring into the revenue line for 2027. And you can see that we have if you want net earnings grow from 0 this year to up to $500,000 or $600,000, $700,000. And then you see in year 5, it flattens out. It flattens out in year 5 because expenses tend to keep going up, but we aren't modeling further growth in the census because we're already up at 42, and that's kind of, that's pretty close to full. So then now, Erica, so if you could go back 1 slide, I just want to talk about one other thing. So all those figures you just saw are exclusive of the debt service cost. Now, the debt service for our line home will be in the general fund, but it'll be a borrowing of $112 million, and it'll be total debt service of $170 million over 25 years. And the debt service payments for each of the first 3 years, which is what we're looking at here, from 28 to fiscal year 28 to 30, averages $8.7 million a year. So it will add 22 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, or about $700 for a home assessed at $3.2 million. I just wanted to flag that. And then, Eric, if you could go 2 slides forward, go to the next slide, please. And 1 more, please. 1, there you go. So, no, right there, thank you. So you saw on the previous slide that looked like this, we were going up to about $700,000 of profitability and then down to 200 in the year 5 with the debt service, which it's just here for illustrative purposes because the debt service is in the general fund. But this is kind of what the financials look like if you included debt service. So you see that you'd be running at an $8 million deficit in addition to the operating override that's already in place if we accounted for the debt service. And that's kind of all I had to say.
Thank you, Rick. That was pretty comprehensive. Matt?
Yeah, Rick, so just a question. If we were looking at year 6 to 10, the way that is modeled, that to me looks like it's turning the numbers. The way the numbers are, you've got some growing exponentially, and you've taken advantage of the ones that are growing slower, that we're swapping out the nurses, but then that goes away. My guess is this starts to really turn in year 6 to 10 against us.
Yeah, I didn't
major changes.
I didn't choose the period, Matt. We just we asked for a 5-year pro forma. I think you're 100% right. You can't have medical insurance, building insurance, Barnstable County all going up double digits and revenues going up Medicaid and Medicare revenues going up 2%. It's not a business. It's not a model that works. Obviously, private pay, we can try and make it pay for itself. But I don't know the answer. I think one thing though, and Brian may want to chime in on this, but the medical insurance and the buildings insurance, I think he kind of feels like that's probably going to plateau as and not be the 10 and 20% each year. But that is modeled the same way we model any 5-year forecast for the town. So these aren't numbers. They're consistent across work that we do.
Right. No, and I just want to make sure that we're realizing this is it's conservative, but it's best case scenario, conservative first 5 years, the next 5 will not be, if I had to estimate. And the other thing, is there a way to attract more Medicare patients. It seems like that is, if I'm read that right, those are reimbursed at a much better rate, correct? Yeah, so how, is there a way, if this is a really nice facility, instead of 2 or 3 out of the 40, can we get 10 or 20?
Yeah.
Things look
Well,
a whole lot
that-
better.
Yeah, if I could chime in, that is the hope. Again, it's all projections, but there have been other cases of some nursing homes off island. One's called Dwyer Home in Weymouth, which we actually toured. And their experience was once they converted to all single private rooms, their Medicare census jumped significantly because that is and that all comes down to marketing, getting the word out, how much we can really count on that, and that is something that we're taking a look at. The Medicare census, I believe, is up to 5 now, so it's starting to creep up already. But to your point, Matt, it is something that would obviously help the revenue. That we call it quality payer mix. So when we look at a model for other nursing homes, we combine Medicare and managed care. The other advantage we have is with the 4-star rating, we can start to attract some private Medicare Advantage plans. Like we're working with MGB has their own product now at Nantucket Cottage Hospital. So we're starting to apply for those. So we're going to apply for that insurance, which is also at a higher rate. And you're exactly right. Again, I just want just a word of caution. It's all a projection, but that is the secret sauce to get the quality mix, Medicare, managed Medicare, and private pay all combined to offset, to have a higher revenue base. The Medicaid will always be there, though. That's a mission that we will, that's always going to be there. So.
Yeah. So Matt, we model, if I jump back in, so in 2024, we had 9 private pays, and we've got, I think, a reasonably conservative estimate in 29 and 30 of 12. So you go from 9 to 12. In Medicare, we go from 3 to 6, and maybe we can do better than that. And those paid by insurance goes from 1 to 4. Those are the better payer categories. So we are trying to change that mix, to Bob's point.
Malcolm?
Madam Chair, yeah, could I continue that discussion a little bit? I mean, these are all elderly patients. Why isn't everyone on Medicare? Am I missing something?
They all are on Medicare, but once the Medicare is exhausted after a short-term rehab stay, if they're long-term, so that gets to the point of the percentage of mix of your patients. So generally, the long-term chronic care who's there for years, ultimately is going to convert to Medicaid. It's a dilemma that we all, unfortunately, every nursing home goes through this. There are facilities out there that are averaging 70% Medicaid. So it's all in how you try to manage. That's why I'm passionate about, yes, try to increase short-term rehab, increase Medicare, increase patient days, so that turns over. So it's all in managing that. So sort of bed management.
2 more questions. What do we do in the future when this country gets around to a single payer system?
You hope that it's high enough to meet your costs.
I
We
don't know.
aren't going to be around.
I just couldn't, but
Malcolm, buy me a crystal ball.
We don't know
then
what's gonna happen.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I could be here all night. I just ask one more thing. Obviously, this is not a great business model, but when you said improved recruitment, I think that's just wonderful. But where are all these nurses going to sleep and live and send their kids to school, et cetera? We have a housing problem, right?
I mean, I'll speak to that. It's not really for Bob. Malcolm, as you know, we're doing an awful lot in the housing space. We are acquiring them as quickly as we possibly can, and I think we've actually made a difference. I think if you look at DPW, I think we found better. We're finding more people who are that we're able to house who are applying for jobs at DPW, for instance, and so I actually think that. We have the capital article for the additional weight drive housing coming up at next year's town meeting. So we're building it as quickly as we can. As you've heard Libby speak to, we spend an enormous amount of time on the housing issue, and I think we're on a really good path forward. We were talking today. I actually worry a little bit that we might build too much town employee housing. So
Rick.
what? Sorry, Brooke. I'm not allowed to say that.
No, just, nope. So, any other questions? Tom?
Yeah, I just want to say, Rick, that was a terrific presentation. That answered any question I would have on that for those 5 years. And then not to engage in rank speculation about the future of entitlements in the federal government, but there's obviously some moves to maybe with DOGE and tighten up. So I don't know how we factor all that in, but I'm not going to put Bob or Rick on the spot on that, but I wanted to comment on it.
Yeah. Can I just make one more comment on something that I should have mentioned when I was talking about the debt service, and that is, it's quite, I'm told, is quite common when building facilities like this that you solicit a lot of donations, as many as you possibly can. I could just say that because that debt service number is a big number, and we may be able to make that a little bit more palatable if we have a successful fundraising approach.
Okay. Don?
I mean, and there are people that do want to work on the fundraising aspect of it. I think that there are significant opportunities there. We also don't really know how the CPE credit will grow over time as everything grows, right? Just something that's not really factored in there.
One other comment, I can't help it, but page 115, I called this the lemonade slide. When your son or daughter is running a lemonade stand and they're selling lemonade and they're losing money, they're selling and losing 10 cents a cup, and how are you going to make it? How are you going to make that up? Oh, I'm just going to sell more, Dad. That's what this reminds me of. Therefore, increasing census likely increases operating deficit. And I was kind of laughing at that today. You just said that in a nicer way than I would have, Rick.
I was trying to think, what we lose on each transaction we make up in volume. Yeah. I just didn't think it was appropriate to put it on the slide.
Madam Chair, I just want one more comment.
Sure.
I think it was a good presentation. Healthcare business is not a business to go into. Just look at that. And we have no idea what the future is going to be, but we have to make a decision whether that's what we want to do. But predicting whether we're going to make money or lose money, who knows?
That's easy. We're going to lose money. It's going to be how much are we going to lose?
Yeah, that's right. How much are we willing to lose? That's the question.
Well, I think the exercise is invaluable because the voters are going to have to assess not only are they willing to pay more taxes to build a building, but do we also want, as a community, to be in a position of heavily subsidizing a component of our healthcare for our seniors, in perpetuity? Because once we spend $100+ million, we're locked into whatever the overhead is to run that facility over time. And I want us all to be really aware that it comes as a package. It's not a buy it, you own it. It's a buy it, you own it, and you got to pay for it.
It's
So,
forever, Madam Chair, and it's decision about if we do this, what don't we do, and vice versa.
yeah, in the context of everything. So, Don?
That's a very big reason why we did the operating override first, to see how the community was feeling about it before undertaking all of the money that's been spent to propose this new facility and really get down to what it needs for the long term and is going to cost. But on the flip side, people are going to also have to recognize that, like those capital improvements that were brought to us earlier over the next 5 years, we may not, if this doesn't pass, we may not be doing that. We may be most likely will be making moves to exit from this business if the commitment's not there.
That's a good point, Madam Chair, because those potential capital expenses for the present home, I'm sure, probably half of what we'd be paying for a new one.
Yeah, and some of those are on hold, by the regulators because they know that the process we're in the process of trying to secure and permit a new building. And so they're going to come fast. And I've said this before, and I'm going to keep repeating it between now and town meeting. For me personally, this is the decision. It's not, we don't like this version and we'll do something else. This is, for me as a board member, the last proposal for having a municipal nursing home. It's not, do we move it to another lot? Do we do it somewhere else? Do we do a different model? We have spent millions and millions of dollars assessing this market, assessing what the community needs, designing a beautiful facility, one that will serve our community well if we decide to invest in it. But we have to decide whether we're going to invest in it, and if we don't, it's time we move on. And I feel really strongly about that, because there's no point in pouring more millions of dollars into other plans that only are going to cost more down the road.
And pouring more $1 million into a facility that's never going to meet the current needs or the current codes. And I mean, that's what we would be looking at. And of course, we're not immediately going out of the business, but it's going to be the inevitable choice. And it's, going to be somewhat imminent. It's not going to run for another 20 years.
Yeah, the next planning will be the planning for that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'll just quickly comment. I've been really impressed, being a new board member, on all the time that Dawn and Peter Schaefer, Peter, Bob, and SMRT and the board has spent on this. It's been really impressive. And I think the merits aside of this in the future, that the package that will probably go to the voters, and as you said, as a decision point, will have really all the I's dotted and T's crossed. And I just been really impressed by that work that everyone's put into this, and time and effort and care.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for everything OIH tonight. Appreciate the depth and complexity of everything you've shared with us tonight. Libby, next up.
Next is just a standing agenda item following the town administration's general fund budget presentation from last week. If the board had any additional questions or comments or anything like that, we're happy to answer them. Otherwise, we have a public hearing scheduled for January 8th.
Okay, moving on.
Next, we've got continued review of town-sponsored warrant articles, and I'm going to again take you through the updated outline.
Before Libby starts, we do need to start making some decisions about this. So if I might make a suggestion, if Libby's going through, if there's anything that anyone on the board thinks we shouldn't be doing for annual town meeting, speak now so we can discuss it and take it off the list and not have town administration continue to work on it.
Okay, a little bit of updates from your meeting last week. The first section is pretty much the same. Under zoning bylaw and general bylaw amendments, we now have draft articles from planning. You previously, the planning staff reviewed with you preliminary article concepts, and those concepts have now been turned into draft articles. They are being reviewed by town council, and they are in your packet. Don't need anything from you on that right now. Also the rezoning of 8 White Street, that's going to come off. I heard from the housing director that that's not ready, and that'll probably be brought forward in the fall or next 2026 annual town meeting. General bylaws, e-bikes, e-regs, e-bikes and e-scooters and that kind of thing. That is under review with town council. A kind of a rough draft article was prepared. It's been given to the police chief to review. There were some questions and concerns about it, so it's kind of going back and forth to get hopefully finalized for you all. The noise bylaw, I gave that to the police chief to review, and it was generally seeming like it was a good idea to make it a little bit clearer, so I will need a determination from the board on that one. If not tonight, soon.
And anyone have any thoughts on that immediately? In or out, timeline? Last week, we talked about public outreach and making sure there was enough public input.
I think we should put this off to the fall. It's just, there's too many other higher priority things, and without a lot of public outreach and knowing exactly, the public knowing exactly, I just think we should delay it.
Consensus on that?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
And I think if the police chief, I think making it the same is great, but I think if it becomes contentious, then it's going to bring a lot of people out against that, and I think it could harm other things. So, strategically, I think it's probably a good thing to pass over it.
Okay, good. Rental car bylaw changes, that's in progress. We are working on a draft article for you all, and that is going to be on your January 8th meeting. I think the answer to the next item, anything from the select board regarding short-term rentals, is no.
I'm a hard no. Anyone else? Okay, Tom?
Madam Chair, just say quickly that a constituent reached out today and said that Tisbury passed a big package and like we should take a look at that, but yeah. That's a no.
Okay.
Okay.
Traffic calming signage, I think you all were pretty good with this. It was in your packet a week or two ago. Okay, so that's in. The local bylaw to mirror Chapter 91 enforcement. I think the Natural Resources Director and I have talked about this. That is just not ready. So maybe I'll put that in the fall list. The wetlands bylaw cleanup, that was attached a couple weeks ago. It's fairly minor changes, but they do need to be coordinated with the new Concom wetlands regs. So I think those are kind of no-brainers. So, in? Probably, okay. The Contract Review Committee membership, there were some recommendations from a recent review of the Contract Review Committee and Council for Human Services funding allocation process. And as far as I know, we were waiting on recommendations from those two groups. I haven't seen anything.
My sense is that they're making some process changes, and they want to see how that goes. So I don't think that's going to be ready, but we should check with Jericho.
Okay. Potential amendment to outdoor lighting bylaw due to street light survey project. I am not sure what's going on with this, so I'll have to double check that one. Home rule petitions. I don't think I need too much from you on this. The Community Housing Bank is highlighted because I forgot to take that out. The housing director asked the other day to please keep in the transfer fee legislation, which is what this is. It's just called something different. And I think the thing that I need from you all is the Coastal Resiliency District establishment, which was a home rule petition at the 2024 annual town meeting. It was tabled indefinitely. And the question is, do we want to resubmit it? I think I've generally heard yes, with some outreach that really explains what this is.
I would ask Vince, sorry, I'm the rep on crack. I'd ask Vince on that. I was I was a bit hesitant last year on it. John Giorgio sort of sounded hesitant speaking to crack last couple weeks ago. And so I think we should double check because it might.
I have it on here because Vince said, please put it in.
Huh?
Is the community ready for it?
Don?
I mean, I think we should postpone it because the outreach is behind already. If you want to bring it to this town meeting, and there's so much else on there.
Tom?
I agree with Dawn. Also, Rep Moakley or Rep-elect Moakley is about to take office. I'm sure he will be handling this, and we already have a number of home rule petitions for him and Senator Sear to hopefully get through the legislature.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm not sure the community's educational level for it.
Yeah, mic on. Sorry, say it again.
I don't think the community is at an educational level for it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we concur on that. Out Postpone. Yep. More explanation about what it could achieve and some really,
And I would like to have a couple of victories with betterments, if we, find a way to do some simpler things along those lines. We've done it at Sheep's Pond a little bit, but, this is a process, and I agree we're not there.
I think it's, to me, to some extent, it's the community coming to understand and accept how we share financial responsibility for projects that are, have varying degrees of benefit to individual property owners versus the community at large. And I think there's still a lot of, we've sort of had Sconset has been the one example, and it's been so complicated and confusing, but there's literally hundreds of these impacts coming, and coming to consensus on shared responsibility for paying for them is going to be a long conversation.
I thought about something similar. We were talking about parking earlier. What people want someone else to pay, and they want those other people, so they want everyone else to modify their behavior. So everyone thinks someone else will do something different and someone else will pay, but some of this stuff we have to, it's community. We have to do it together and do it in a way that's fair, and that's hard to do, to build that, so.
And finally, sometimes imminence makes action.
Okay. So I'll put that on tentative for fall pending some outreach development. Mass General Law acceptances, the good landlord tax exemption opt-in. Honestly, I lost all track of this, and I had noted that we were going to discuss it tonight, but obviously we didn't do that. Was that last week?
It was requested to put it off, so I don't know what the status is now.
So put it off like forever, or?
So
Yep.
I just meant the review for the select board.
Yeah, we spoke about it. We spoke about it at AHT, and Tracy's report was to put it off.
Okay, so like fall tentative put off?
I think so.
Or, okay.
Going back up, what about fertilizer ban? Do we want to, is that going to get resubmitted, fertilizer ban?
I guess I need you all to go through those, but tentatively I had put all of those in as resubmit. If not, I do have a question mark there. Resubmit if not passed by December 31st. Of course, I won't know that until after December 31st, but I would emphasize that we hear, all of us, I'm sure, hear from our state senator and state representative that Nantucket has way too many home rule petitions.
I am still confused about how our request to do a fertilizer ban intersects with state code. And
well, John might be able to explain it, but it isn't very straightforward.
Right, that's why I'm wondering whether, again, this is another case of, are we asking for something that doesn't really make any sense? And therefore, we're asking the legislature to grant us something that is in opposition to legislation and regulation that they passed. So what's the likelihood? Tom?
Yeah, I guess I can be more political than maybe John might want otherwise be. Yeah, so basically, it's sort of like the housing bank. Once there's a critical mass of a bunch of these with any issue, then it has a better chance of passing legislature, either as a Commonwealth-wide bill or in case of the transfer fee, the seasonal communities designation sort of took a piece of that. So really it is sort of a messaging bill in some ways, but these are good for the rep and senator to have so they can show that, Senator Steer represents 20 towns. So if 15 of his towns pass 15 of these, then there's kind of critical mass so he can show his fellow legislator. Yeah.
So you think so leave it if it doesn't hurt, just it's up there, leave it?
Yeah, I think it passed town meeting, I think probably unanimously, And that's good for, if that's what the voters want, that's good for us to send up there.
Yeah, okay.
I wonder, are there other communities that are trying to do the same thing? Are we standing alone? John, do you know at all?
Yes, I believe, Madam Chair, I believe that at least the town of Orleans has passed this. I believe there are a couple of other towns that have as well. I agree with Matt and Tom that it doesn't really hurt to include this again. I don't think if it's just Nantucket pursuing it, there'll be a lot of expectation that it will pass. But if there is a critical mass of other towns seeking it, then that might be a different story. If you recall, what this article does is to extend the date by which towns can enact local regulations. There was in the State Fertilizer Act, there was a deadline, a date certain by which towns had to have acted or they're precluded from acting. And what this does is extend that deadline to, I want to say, 1 year after the passage of the home rule petition.
Thanks for that clarification.
So my recommendation would be just keep it on, resubmit it, basically.
Okay, thanks, John.
Do you want to quickly go through each one? That would be kind of helpful for me, actually, to see if
Okay.
you want to keep them all on, or.
Yeah.
So we know Community Housing Bank is a yes. The Sewer Act Amendment, that's most likely a yes. I mean, some of these are very straightforward. They should just be approved. The Government Study Committee recommendations, those started in 2022. I think those would stay, right? Fertilizer, we just talked about, pension bonds.
Let me ask you, the Government Study Committee recommendations, are they impacted by the change of government
No.
discussion? Okay, good.
John could weigh in, but no,
No,
they're unrelated.
Okay.
Well, I would say that they, I think most of those are charter amendments that are being proposed. So I would suggest that they could potentially be impacted by the Town Government Study Committee. I'm not sure that's a reason not to resubmit this, however, since my recollection is there were a number of items that really do not involve the issue of the legislative body, which, as we know, is the study committee is looking at a town council form of government. So again, because this was voted by town meeting, I don't see any reason why not to resubmit it.
Okay.
Well, they're really all like that, then. Yeah, okay, so just all of them, sounds like. The seasonal community designation opt-in, that is in, and I should take tentatively off, but, well, I guess keep it in, but for now, it's in.
Let me just go back to the NPDC one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I think I took that off.
Yeah.
But I forgot to actually strike through it. But I think I think I've heard before from the board that that's not going to be resubmitted. Is that right? Or?
Well,
There's another.
it was passed. This is different from the citizen warrant article, correct? That's.
No, I think this is the citizen article. This is the
23.
citizen article. Yeah.
I think what I
Right,
probably.
I'm sorry, 2024 special, yeah, so this is in process.
Yeah, and
So it
actually.
shouldn't need to be, it hasn't even been filed yet.
Right. So I don't think I ever got around to updating this because I also, I did have Article 16, 2024 STM. I did have the little history there, but I think at the time I wasn't sure where it stood. I had that note there, but it hasn't been submitted yet, but my understanding is that it's going to be after December 31st, so we don't need to have it resubmitted at 2025 annual town meeting.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
My concern with that is if the MPDC is going to go and oppose it, then, after a 70% vote, they're going to go oppose it. I think that the better solution would be to sit down and organize it and either have the sponsor of this, ask to have this amended or present something together, because I think this continued polarization isn't going to get us anywhere. So, that's what I was trying to do, and I was really close. I would love to think that we could pull that together, but.
Malcolm?
I think, Madam Chair, my colleague's an optimist.
Okay. Anybody else?
It was approved by a large vote, and it should continue on.
And it was sent up to the State House to be filed in the new session.
Then we should, as this board, can vote to support it, or we can ask the other boards not to go and fight it. I mean, that's what happens. Sometimes we send things up, and people from here go up and argue against it, and then what are we doing? We should, if we're gonna figure things out, figure it out here before it gets there. So I just think that it's unfortunate that we, anyway.
I would like it if we could facilitate a process that brings everyone together on this so that we have a cohesive proposal to the state when we're changing a major structure. And I would hope that we could figure out a way to do that, because I mean, there are some, for me, my opinion is that there are some flaws in the current proposal that are going to be really problematic in terms of keeping an advisory board like that filled. I think there's too many elected positions, and I think that the term limits, the only other term limit is on the Cultural Council, which is a state mandate, are things that we should consider altering and compromising on.
And my understanding that can be done at the State House through the hearing process. If we do come together, then we go as a unit and testify in the hearing process on a joint proposal to amend it to a compromise agreement. And I think that is the path to move forward.
Right. And that,
rather
if we
than
could do
putting
that.
this on the floor of town meeting again, and having a less than robust conversation around the benefits of the differing positions between the NPDC and the citizen warrant article. And again, town meeting is not the place to hash out differences. It's a really bad place to try to do it. So I think an effort.
And the State House is a worse place to hash out differences. And I'm embarrassed when we go and do that. And so how, and we should be embarrassed when we go and do that. So how do we, I think Don's right. I think there are some things that could be changed. And I think that there is, how do we do a process like you're saying to do that, And I can talk to you after, Don. I got close, and I think there's a way to do it. I would hope that we could find that and end this, because it should have been done 2 years ago. So.
Okay, there are a couple more under the other section. Coastal erosion structure approval in connection with the SBPF town project at Baxter Road, sort of waiting on Concom outcome on that for now. And there's an additional potential coastal erosion structure for coir logs at potential town and private property at 59 to 83 Baxter Road. The town is not partnered with anybody on this particular project, and it's separate from the other project, the GO2 project, and I'm told that a request is coming on this, but I have not seen anything yet. And I've advised it's quite late in the process to be bringing something like that forward.
This is from a request from property owners?
I believe so, yes. And the issue came up in the summer. So why it's, I don't.
Can I go back to the first one? I think I think that if there's got to be a vote at town meeting, the chance of that passing is, with no sand being put on for 2 or 3 years and the issues that we're dealing with, there's not a chance. Regardless of what the Concom does, I don't see how this is going to, how people are going to approve this. And so I don't know what we as a board, we have to, I think we talked in agenda meeting today about putting this on and discussing some of this more in depth in January. But I think that, we're running straight into a wall if something doesn't change between now and town meeting, regardless of what the Concom does. So.
We did discuss having a January discussion about
Yeah.
that. The town council study committee, you agreed last week, I think it was, or maybe it was the week before, to have a warrant article and ballot question that are non-binding, sense of the meeting types of things. And that's basically it. So as I think I mentioned last week, by January 8th, I should have a draft actual warrant document to start going over with you.
Great.
I feel like we got a lot done there, Libby. Oh, darn.
So that was my last thing is the town manager activity report, which I just have not been able to get to lately for a couple of months, but here, I finally got it together for tonight. I can take us through very quickly. It's in your packet, it's online, people can read it. We tend to sort of categorize the activities. Business as usual, lots of items there. We just took up some of them tonight. A number of strategic and major initiatives. We have spent a massive amount of time on the Vineyard Wind turbine blade failure and the offshore wind issues and the proposed vessel slowdown restrictions. That has impacted regular work. So just want to, I know you all know that, but just commenting on that. Some other projects are taking a lot of time. Island Home, obviously, long-term solid waste planning. The Wait Drive seasonal housing project that is over here behind the 2FG parking lot, that project has started. Lots of other projects. We're working on our communication strategic plan. Human Services grants review. We're developing a scope of services for a community needs assessment. That was one of the recommendations in the report that we talked about earlier, the Surfside Area Roadway Project. Lots of things going on with PFAS. They're all listed there. That is also taking a huge amount of staff time. Housing, of course, is taking a lot of time. And there's many, many tracks there for housing initiatives. Staffing and personnel management related. I got these stats from the HR director. We're tracking a 10% vacancy rate. That's about 41 positions across all town departments. About 23 of those fall within the general fund departments. We onboarded 4 new full-time firefighters this month. And we have a lot of collective bargaining and other personnel matters that are coming up and ongoing. Some of us have been doing the Mass Municipal Association webinars. I know that the chair did one a week or two ago, and those are really, really helpful. At the end of November, one of the assistant town managers, Greg, attended the Mass Municipal Managers Association Annual Fall Conference, and he came back with a great report about that. We have lots of real estate issues. The town building complex exterior repairs, when I realized when I did my most recent report, which again was a couple months ago, those repairs were getting completed. They're done now. And now we're trying to figure out some plans for the interior of the building. It's kind of shabby looking, trying to get it looking better. Lots of training going on, cybersecurity, ethics, Teams, OneDrive, ChatGPT. We're starting to look at policies for the use of AI and other just various meetings. And I think that's it for town manager's report.
Thanks, Libby. We don't have anything from the ZBA on independent special counsel, so we'll skip over that. Any committee reports?
You got mine already. Island Home.
Yeah, I was going to say done. Done took an hour and a half. Anybody else?
Just a quick comment. I did, on the Turo stuff, I did, when I was looking through my box, I told Brooke this earlier in the agenda, I was looking through an old town box I have in my office of things, and was looking up something else, and I came across sort of, I think it was 97 and early 2000s, and legal opinions on rental cars and why we did what we did. And I forwarded that along to Matthew, whatever the attorney is that's doing this. And he said it could be helpful, thank you. Because then he'd asked about it before and I didn't have it, and I'm not sure, but it just interesting that it came up. And the other thing, looking through all that, some of this was like comp plan days, and it's in some of the things that we were, so that people were worried about visioning then, we are, sort of all, the expenses all coming due at once, and, and what the island will be if it's completely overcrowded, and, et cetera, et cetera. The things that were sort of really concerns then have, a lot of them have really kind of come to fruition. And I think what I've been feeling, what I think the island has been feeling over the last couple of years, it isn't just a COVID thing, it's and what we're feeling now was things that we knew back then and that we were concerned about. And so it really kind of, it struck me that I haven't spoken up maybe strongly enough about some of those things. And that hopefully we'll start to realize that there's sort of no free lunch, and we can't, that we've got to take care of the island and keep it nice for all of us, or we really are gonna, we're gonna feel it. And so, it was all came together. I have a friend who's in real estate sending me the real estate, information he's getting, and the projections and the commercial and the impacts it's gonna have over the next 5 or 10 years. And I really, we're on an interesting time, and I think it all kind of came together, and I'm gonna hopefully try to speak a little more strongly about some of that, because I used to and I have not. So anyway, I know that's sort of not a committee report, but it kind of is. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody want to go home?
Motion to second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody, for listening out there.
Toss that.